He was backstabbed in the most brutal way imaginable. That girl utterly shattered him. Now she has to face the consequences. In this world, beginners are looked down on like garbage. Nobody offers them any guidance. The main character was mocked for his weakness and rejected by every party. Yet this particular girl stood out. She claimed she didn't belong to any team and told him he was exactly what she was searching for. As they exited the city gates, she complimented him, saying his armor made him look like a true knight. Just one simple sentence was enough to make him start dreaming about a life together. He pictured their first kiss, a proposal, a wedding, and even children. But once they reached a quiet area beyond the city, she struck straight through his chest, quite literally using her enchanted staff. As he collapsed, he demanded to know why she would go to such extremes just for his gear. She coldly replied that she had no interest in worthless loot like his. She mocked his poverty, suggesting only a beggar's son would wear such pathetic equipment. After crushing both his dignity and his heart, she finished him off, declaring she was tired of dealing with weaklings. That she marked her 1000th beginner kill. That milestone granted her access to a hidden class. She became the very first goddess within Chrono Life. Pleased with her evolution, she departed, claiming she had greater objectives ahead. Meanwhile, the defeated player suffered a severe punishment. He respawned in the closest town, stripped of half his experience and stats, haunted by memories of everyone belittling him. Jiwoo resolved to gamble everything he had left and attempt to enhance his flimsy starter gear. He started with his sword, but the upgrade failed miserably. Frustrated, he moved on to upgrading his glove instead. That attempt also ended in total disaster. After repeatedly bringing down his hammer, every single item shattered, leaving him with nothing improved. His future in the game seemed finished, and he could do nothing but sit there in despair when a small branch dropped beside him. It was a basic beginner item given out for free. Most players considered it worthless and tossed it aside. Tempted by impulse, he tried upgrading it once and surprisingly succeeded. The stick gained a level and a slight boost in damage. He tried again and succeeded, annoyed by the absurdity. Determined, Jiwoo chose to keep upgrading the useless stick until it snapped. His arms trembled from exhaustion as he continued. He swung the hammer for one last blow. That final strike pushed the stick to the absurd peak of pleasant 99, leaving him speechless. Shaken, he fumbled and let the stick slip from his hands. The moment it hit the ground, the system registered it as an offensive move, triggering the most massive explosion ever witnessed. The blast was so overwhelming it nearly tore the entire planet apart. As he stared at the devastation, countless system alerts flooded his vision. He had set a new record for the most players defeated in one strike. Staggering 850,617 players were wiped out. Once he grasped the absurd strength he now possessed, he swore he would use it for revenge against everyone who had mocked him, most of all that so-called goddess. Jiwoo was so broke he couldn't even afford fresh clothes. As he walked through town, another gamer accidentally shoved him. The man grew angry and began threatening him. Jiwoo calmly replied that he had been warned, and he swung his upgraded stick. The opponent detonated instantly, erasing part of the city. Bystanders quickly realized he was responsible for the chaos. Jiwoo felt invincible until a sudden system notification startled him. His weapon's durability had dropped to 3 out of 5, meaning only 3 more strikes remained before it shattered. He slipped into a narrow alley to gather his thoughts. He held the most overpowered weapon alive. He could only wield it 3 more times. Wasting it on random revenge kills would be foolish. Thinking strategically, he chose to gain fame by defeating the game's ultimate boss. Reaching the Valley of Death, Jiwoo was greeted by a menacing roar. Before him stood the mightiest boss in Chrono Life, Urus, the fearsome 2-headed dragon. Urus attempted to intimidate him with overwhelming presence, but mid-speech, one strike severed a head, leaving the dragon stunned. From that instant, everything shifted. Urus sought negotiation instead of battle. Jiwoo had no desire to entertain conversation. With only 3 attacks remaining, he aimed to defeat the supreme boss swiftly and skyrocket his level. Another blow landed, reducing the dragon to ruins. Jiwoo sighed, knowing his miraculous weapon was close to vanishing. Seizing the moment, Urus offered a deal to save himself. Jiwoo impatiently demanded he get to the point. Urus revealed the secret of ego-class weapons. When a mighty soul binds itself to a weapon, it transforms into the game's ultimate armament and gains endless durability. There was a condition, though, to unlock this power. Jiwoo had to form a pact with the dragon, allowing Urus to survive as a spirit dwelling within the stick. Without hesitation, Jiwoo agreed to the contract. Urus merges his spirit into the wooden staff. The weapon instantly evolves into something far stronger. It attains the ego-class status and limitless durability. At last, Jiwoo is able to resume his quest for vengeance. Now he can unleash his abilities without holding back or worrying about breaking it. At the same time, in the capital city, tension rises as wanted notices bearing Jiwoo's face are distributed throughout every kingdom, offering a massive reward whether he is captured dead or alive. The bounty is set at 1 billion gold coins, and as if that were not enough, Reinforcements have stepped in. Numerous adventurer guilds from across the realm assemble to handle the crisis. The 5 most dominant guilds in Chrono Life convene with their formidable leaders, united by a single goal: to track down the man responsible for slaughtering over 850 players in one devastating strike. In their eyes, he poses a danger to the entire world and must be eliminated. Thus, the Alliance appoints its most honored warrior as commander, Vassal King Arden of the Justice Guild, whose piercing gaze misses nothing. Under his command, the World Union Guild is established, and war is formally declared on Jiwoo. Yet the staff now holds boundless strength, and Jiwoo is free to draw out its full potential. Surprisingly, as he strolls cheerfully through the capital, Jiwoo is suddenly startled. A tiny being emerges from the staff, quickly reveals itself as Eurus, the twin-headed dragon bound by their pack. Jiwoo finds the miniature dragon oddly adorable, though unfortunately he alone can perceive him. Still, the peace does not last forever. The pleasant mood is destined to fade. Jiwoo picks up a sheet of paper and asks what it is. It turns out to be his bounty notice. The revelation leaves him speechless. He soon realizes the city walls are covered with countless identical posters. They hang everywhere, while Eurus cheers excitedly beside him. He claims such fame is natural for his hewn nymph, who wiped out hundreds with a single blow, feat even he never achieved, and the 1 billion gold prize equates to a fortune in real currency. Jiwoo wonders how an AI can casually use slang like that without breaking system rules. Eurus shrugs it off, saying rules hardly matter to someone already dead, then asks what is Hangul. Kohya Enus Hangul, Koya Enus Hangul, Kong Enus. NIM plans next since players worldwide will hunt him for that reward, even joking that maybe humanity should be erased entirely. Jiwoo glances aside, recalling the chaos from when he dropped the staff. Then he looks back at the sea of wanted notices. Strangely, he admits the situation does not feel unpleasant. In fact, it makes him feel like a star. Declares that from now on he will follow the LHS approach. Eurus tilts his head, puzzled by the term. Jiwoo explains it means loser hiding strength, where a powerhouse pretends to be insignificant. Eurus argues that humans will simply dismiss him as weak if he does that. Jiwoo laughs, insisting that is exactly what makes it entertaining. He says appearing like a nobody, while secretly being the hero, is part of fully enjoying his fantasy adventure. Suddenly, an arrow pierces him without warning. Eurus gasps as Jiwoo collapses, blood spilling onto the pavement. He lowers his head while Eurus hovers anxiously above, calling out to him. From a rooftop, Hawkeye watches with a rare cyan bow and matching arrows in hand. He calmly announces that the shot has landed. Below, his forces charge toward Jiwoo, who remains motionless as Arden Castle's troops encircle him. Hawkeye proclaims in the name of the Supreme Commander of the 5 Guild Alliance that the criminal who killed 800 must be restrained and imprisoned. Soldiers shout in unison, eager to carry out the order. Eurus frantically asks if his hewn nim can still stand, warning that even weak humans become dangerous in large numbers. With the arrow lodged in his chest, Jiwoo slowly rises to face the army. The troops cry out that their target is standing again. Hawkeye commands them not to allow him a moment's rest, and orders a simultaneous assault. Eurus calls to his Chengnim once more in fear. Jiwoo, however, retracts what he said earlier. He pulls the arrow free from his chest and tosses it aside with disdain. Clutching his staff firmly, he remarks that he only wished to live quietly as a side character. But these fools forced his hand. A colossal surge of energy bursts forth, lighting up the entire world. A single swing of his staff, he releases a blast comparable to a nuclear strike, and within seconds, every soldier collapses lifeless onto the ground. Hawkeye coughs violently, barely clinging to life. Struggles to comprehend what just occurred. In a blink, his entire force was obliterated. To his horror, he sees that the capital itself has been erased. In an instant, Jiwoo stands directly before him. Hawkeye trembles as he meets his gaze. While Jiwoo steps closer, the elf hastily retrieves a summoning orb capable of calling countless players. He crushes the orb in desperation. A glowing magic circle forms beneath him. As numerous portals tear open across the sky, the elf shouts for every member of the Union to answer, initiating a massive teleportation spell. Waves of players pour out from each gateway. Jiwoo observes calmly, without the slightest concern. The reinforcements quickly surround him, revealing the immense army of the World Union. Nearly 3 million have been summoned with one objective: to eliminate Jiwoo. Hawkeye points at him and screams for the assault to begin. Warriors surge forward at his command. Facing the overwhelming numbers, Jiwoo exhales deeply, casually shifts his staff aside. Then with one effortless sweep, he slices through an entire line of troops. Anyone caught in that arc is instantly wiped from existence. Eurus stares in disbelief at what unfolds. Jiwoo sweeps the staff toward the opposite side and drives it straight ahead, wiping out yet another massive chunk of the forces. Dragon is completely dumbfounded. He recalls assuming Jiwoo would be overwhelmed if everyone attacked together. To him, that had seemed like simple logic. No matter how mighty Eurus considered himself, even he could not withstand millions at the same time. World Union consisted of top-tier rankers worldwide, and even Eurus might fall if he deployed his full army against them. That was why he believed retreating had been the smartest option. Now he understands how terribly mistaken he was. Taking advantage of a brief gap, several soldiers from a distinguished unit rush, brandishing blades and spears. They spring toward Jiwoo, trying to impale him, yet he casually shifts his staff, erasing them instantly with a single motion. Another entire line of troops is cleaved apart. Behind the scenes, Abracadabra and her assisting mages hastily begin chanting. Jiwoo senses activity at his back, turning to witness a gigantic magic circle forming overhead. Abracadabra unleashes the ancient enchantment of destruction, a spell meant to obliterate him completely. A massive beam of energy surges in his direction. He watches it approach with mild surprise, commenting that the spell's title sounds impressive. He decides his own move deserves a name too. He lifts his staff high, swing slices through everything skyward beyond the atmosphere, and he names it Arise. The magic circle along with the ancient incantation is utterly shattered. Shocked, Abracadabra can only question how her sacred magic was broken so easily. Royal magicians brace themselves for further orders. Before they can respond, Jiwoo raises the staff, declaring this move strike. He cuts down everything before him, blasting the mages away. The clash of 1 against 3 million ends not merely in defeat, but utter catastrophe as the World Union collapses. Hawkeye drops to his knees, cold sweat pouring from sheer terror, muttering that it cannot be real, till Jiwoo stands directly before him. Jiwoo explains he spared him unintentionally, because controlling that much power was difficult. The elf demands to know why he was left alive. Jiwoo exhales and says the answer should be obvious. He was the one who fired the earlier arrow. Panic floods Hawkeye's face, only for the staff to slam into it. As expected, that battle soon dominated discussions everywhere, not only among Chrono Life players, but across other games, and even among non-gamers. Despite the carnage, the staff remained flawless. Jiwoo inspects it while finishing off the elf. Eurus praises his Hyung Nim's greatness, and Jiwoo remarks he had wondered where the dragon disappeared to. Suddenly footsteps approach from behind. Jiwoo turns around and finds himself facing a young woman. Questions whether another opponent remains, thinking this is becoming troublesome, until he recognizes her silhouette. They lock eyes amid the devastated battlefield. The goddess of life gazes back calmly. Rage rises within Jiwoo as he identifies her, an encounter no one anticipates. She smiles softly and greets him, saying it has been a while, Mr. Hay. The sunset reveals endless plains, blanketed with 3 million corpses and scattered weapons. The center stands Jiwoo facing the goddess of life once more. He thinks the entire spectacle feels strangely theatrical. He recalls her insulting his parents as beggars, his hand shaking with fury, unsure whether it is because his emotions have reversed so drastically. Yet laughter escapes him. The goddess of life politely asks how he has been, saying fate must be involved since she never expected to meet him again. Jiwoo calls it nonsense, claiming her presence alone shows someone dangerous was hunting him. She smiles, curious if that is truly the aura she gives off. Jiwoo admits he wants to crush her, but first asks if she changed her hair color. She beams, pleased he noticed, explaining she sacrificed him to unlock the hidden goddess of life class, which resulted in her altered hair shade. Jiwoo fixes her with an icy stare and raises his staff, remarking that gaining her title through 1,000 deaths sounds more like goddess of death. She laughs and admits the comment is amusing. Exactly, Jiwoo responds. He slams the staff down and fires a surge of energy toward her, declaring he has heard enough and now it is time to crush her. He questions whether he is not rushing things, but the blast detonates regardless, further ravaging the already ruined land. Jiwoo stares at the rising smoke without emotion. What a pity, her voice echoes. I hoped we could talk longer. She materializes behind him unexpectedly. Jiwoo whirls around instantly and brings the staff crashing down again. The explosion fractures everything ahead. Eurus shouts that the attack connected, praising Hyung Nim for a flawless blow, smooth as slicing a fish. Jiwoo replies it was obvious, since those gentle-looking types are usually all bluff. However, as the smoke slowly clears, he sees she remains unharmed. The goddess stands quietly, observing him, remarking that he has indeed grown far stronger. Yet such a weak strike cannot claim her life. Eurus urges his Hyung Nim to look since she survived, and Jiwoo answers that he is well aware. While they bicker, she simply watches with a faint smile. Eurus notices her gaze and becomes puzzled, wondering how she can see him when only Hyung Nim should be able to, declaring it impossible. Jiwoo admits it is odd. He is sure his blow connected, so her remaining untouched makes no sense. The goddess laughs mockingly, asking how a simple human could ever wound a deity. Pretending to be astonished, Jiwoo taps his staff against his head and declares that now he is truly furious. He then dashes at her with full force. The goddess calmly stands there awaiting the strike. It rushes toward her in an instant, triggering yet another enormous blast. Jiwoo does not let her recover and swings again, tearing apart another section of the battle. Presses on with non-stop attacks, cracking and splintering part of the world itself. Eurus watches in awe, noting the continent is trembling and may soon collapse entirely. The goddess, however, says it is pointless. Still smiling, she unfurls her wings and ascends above Jiwoo. Eurus gasps in surprise. Jiwoo begins to perspire, fatigue clearly showing. Her wings dissolve into feathers that drift gently around her. She approaches and asks what Mr. Hyo plans now, teasing that he must have fantasized daily about killing her. He advises surrender, insisting that no matter his growth or the years that pass, he will never end her life, repeating this as she stands close. Jiwoo studies her silently for a moment, shuts his eyes, and exhales while glancing upward. He turns away and steps back. Goddess wonders if he is retreating at last. Instead, he casually swings the staff through the, explaining he was testing its limits to see if he could snap it apart. He insists that will change nothing, and he will never kill her. Jiwoo corrects her, saying she was not his intended target but the planet itself. Goddess is left speechless. Jiwoo explains that if he cannot defeat her directly, he will obliterate the world so she either perishes in the blast or is cast into space. She stares incredulously, doubting a mere human could achieve that. Jiwoo nods, stating he will unleash every ounce of strength. He mentions earlier he did something similar without even going all out. Face darkens with concern. She argues that destroying the planet would kill him too, turning revenge into meaningless self-destruction. She asks whether that outcome would satisfy him. Jiwoo, who had already sacrificed his life to understand, laughs as he recalls the game's brutal rule that only strength matters. He tells her to listen carefully, because now it is their turn to learn. People like her simply fail to grasp it. Lifting his staff, Jiwoo warns that one should never provoke someone with nothing left to lose. Goddess grows uneasy and tells him to stop. Yet Jiwoo swings with every bit of power he has. When the staff strikes the ground, reality itself starts to fracture. Both the goddess and Eurus are engulfed by the explosion. Jiwoo wears a chilling grin throughout. The entire region breaks apart into 6 massive fragments, splitting Earth evenly into those pieces, before erupting like a supernova. The shockwave spreads across the whole chrono-life cosmos, all erased by Jiwoo's single full-powered strike. Streams of data cascade down a monitor. Meanwhile, outside the game, a chamber lined with virtual reality pods. An attendant naps during his duty. A player suddenly shouts after being forcibly logged out of chrono life. He complains they were nowhere near the final boss when the disconnection happened. Others begin asking what caused it, demanding to know if the attendant flipped the master switch by mistake. Now awake, the employee insists it was neither a blackout nor a tripped breaker. A young man speculates the servers of Crowley, the company behind the game, might be down. Someone else quickly announces that a notice has appeared on the homepage, confirms server issues with Chrono Life, and promises an update on reopening late. The crowd is stunned that the system actually crashed, yet one individual remains logged in. His pod indicator still shows active despite the shutdown. Back inside, a synchronization alert flashes. The client updates to version 1.7, scans for active connections, and finds only one user. Jiwoo stands alone in a blank room filled with floating data fragments. He looks around, bewildered, asking where he is. It makes no sense, since he should still be inside the game world. A mysterious voice suddenly mentions SD-389, explaining it was the beautiful planet he destroyed in the 4th universe, that it had been their mother's favorite location. Startled, Jiwoo turns toward the speaker, demanding to know who he is. The blonde man curtly tells him to be quiet, then with a sinister grin, declares that he is God. Jiwoo studies him and sighs, saying that if that is his title it is none of his concern, and asking instead about a black-haired woman. God responds that only the 2 of them exist there. System window appears before Jiwoo, displaying that the active user count is 1. God questions his sanity, reminding him he killed everyone. It should be obvious no one could survive such destruction. Every life form was erased, yet Jiwoo merely laughs. Leaving God perplexed, Jiwoo bursts into wild laughter, shouting that his vengeance is finally fulfilled, and that this was the reason he played. He calls out for Eurus to appear, celebrating his revenge. But there is no response. Strikes the ground with his staff again, summoning the dragon. God repeats that only they remain, so he should not expect that dragon to show up. Jiwoo asks if the user count is truly 1. What exactly are you, an NPC or some administrator? God says he is neither, and as he begins to clarify, space-time suddenly fractures, and the tearing sound of the rift silences him. He let out a breath, grumbling that something was already disrupting the moment. Radiance bloomed at the center of the room, casting a glow across Jiwoo's face. "This is unfortunate, but meeting you was enjoyable," God remarked. "Goodbye, and give my regards to the little furry companion." "Hold on," Jiwoo cried out in shock. Blinding flash swallowed them, and the deity disappeared from sight. Immediately after, the server went offline, and Jiwoo was forcibly logged out. In the identity chamber, only his capsule remained active. It opened with a hiss, exposing his real-world body. Jiwoo removed the VR headset from his head. Unbelievable, why did he appear now, and what was that furry comment about? He muttered irritably. He then noticed a blond man with a cigar staring intently at him. The man rose and approached, listing his information: Lee Jae-woo, 21 years old, 3 months in Chrono Life. And your weapon of choice was the level 99 stick, right? Jiwoo admitted it and demanded the man's identity. Taking off his glasses, the stranger announced, "I'm here to take that stick from you." Jiwoo quickly assessed his circumstances. He was merely a typical university student who liked gaming. Not long ago, he had still been a novice. By sheer fortune, he had crafted a plus 99 stick, using it to crush anyone he disliked, even the girlfriend who betrayed him. After that, a self-proclaimed god appeared and vanished, and now he found himself seated in a restaurant, surrounded by security. Dishes were placed on the table. The blond man ate enthusiastically, while Jiwoo observed. "Go on and eat," he said. "The owner here cooks wonderfully." Jiwoo nodded slowly, still confused about the situation. The man explained this gugbap shop was his haunt back when he was penniless. That was 15 years ago, when my company was founded during Chrono Life's infancy. Realization dawned on Jiwoo as he pieced it together. No way. The blond man introduced himself as Choi Deok-bae, president of Chrono Life, and Jiwoo admitted he thought he was a thug. "And who are all these people?" Jiwoo asked. "Company staff, designers, composers, marketing heads," Deok-bae answered casually. Jiwoo confessed he had mistaken them for gangsters and asked why the Crowley president pursued him personally. "Didn't I say in the capsule room that I came to reclaim the plus 99 stick?" Jiwoo was stunned by that statement. By the shock, Deok-bae replied, "Retrieving bugged items is standard for a game company. But I upgraded it myself," Jiwoo argued. 3%, Deok-bae responded. "That is the official success rate after 10 enhancements, and it decreases further afterward. You should know that." Jiwoo was speechless, yet insisted that if it was not a bug, there had to be a possibility. He abruptly rose from his seat. Deok-bae sighed and declared that the level 99 stick would remain under his supervision. Within the world of Chrono Life, close to Frontal Town, a massive level 21 Garrus advanced across an open field. Player party prepared themselves, shouting warnings. Their mage cast a fire spell, sending a blazing fireball into the beast. The creature roared in pain. Leader cheered and commanded another round. Suddenly, a girl named Kyo unleashed her skill and charged at the monster alone while screaming. Leader yelled at her not to rush in, but she was struck viciously by the Garrus, which tossed her high into the air. She collided with the party's priest, knocking both of them down. The remaining members panicked, shouting that they needed to retreat. Observing from afar, Jiwoo stayed still briefly, then sighed softly, debating his next move. Beside him, Eurus munched on chicken and asked what his Hyung Nim planned. Jiwoo pondered silently, lifting his stick and checking his base stats. He recalled Deok-bae's words about taking custody of the plus 99 weapon, which had left him uneasy. Yet the CEO clarified it was the company's decision. Jiwoo protested that it was unfair. Deok-bae explained he investigated personally and confirmed the stick was not bugged, so the company would no longer interfere with his account. Whether he defeated the ultimate boss, killed 3 million players, or even obliterated the planet, he could act freely as a player. Deok-bae then added more salted vegetables into his gukbap and offered some to Jiwoo, saying the choice to add them or not was his alone. Jiwoo held the dish and stood up. Just then, the elderly restaurant owner smacked Deok-bae's head for ruining the soup. He scolded him for spoiling broth she had simmered all night out of care. Watching this, Jiwoo quietly set the vegetables down. Back in the present, he stared at his stick, recalling that thick salted soup. His focus shifted to a nearby party leader who was swearing loudly. He berated Kyuntuka for failing basic positioning required for party hunts, calling her a troll and blaming her for ruining the hunt. Jiwoo remembered a favor Deok-bae had mentioned. He said despite sounding suspicious, Chrono Life was truly a great game, a vast fantasy of freedom, romance, and adventure beyond imagination. Therefore, Jiwoo should stop destroying everything and just enjoy it. Jiwoo reflected quietly. Suddenly, the leader spat at the girl, the spit landing on her scarf. He told her to leave, refusing to hunt with her, then walked away in disbelief. They shared the same gear. Hyun was expelled from the party. Jiwoo observed the scene silently, sighing that such cruelty was typical under the law of the jungle. Remembering Deok-bae's advice, he decided to enjoy the game his own way because he preferred his salted soup thick and rich. Thinking it over, he shifts his staff and releases its stored power. A surge of energy erupts from him, aimed straight at the band of adventurers. He abruptly halts the strike when a piercing scream reaches his ears. Jiwoo turns around to see Kion shouting that the game was garbage and that everyone could just drop dead. He curses loudly, claiming those idiots have no taste for quality. She insists they should appreciate her weapon, especially after spending a fortune to obtain that blade. Jiwoo stares at her in astonishment. He recalls having once boasted in the same way about his own sword. At that time, others had stared at him just as oddly. Kion then yells that she needs none of them and refuses to join any hunting party, declaring she will go solo. Jiwoo admits to himself that he is no longer sure what to believe. Suddenly, the girl hears a monster materialize directly before her. In truth, numerous creatures had already encircled her. She stiffens, paralyzed by fear at the sight. The beasts stretch their jaws wide. They roar fiercely and charge straight at her, closing the gap with alarming speed. Hyun raises her guard in a desperate attempt to defend herself, but Jiwoo steps in front of her, wondering why he chose to intervene. He swings his staff and unleashes a devastating blow toward the monsters. Everything caught in its path is wiped out entirely. As the cloud of dust slowly disperses, Hyun, who had been shielding her head, gradually parts her eyelids. She finds herself facing the hero, with a perfectly clear sky stretching above him. Jiwoo questions whether he acted out of sympathy or compassion, then decides it was neither. He simply thought it would be entertaining. With that conclusion, he flashes her a grin, which leaves her completely bewildered. He walks toward her, thinking the whole situation had turned rather messy and confusing. Thus, the tale begins with this very prologue. He suggests that they team up for hunting. She bluntly tells him to buzz off, claiming she does not party with rookies. Then she spits on the ground and strides away. Jiwoo stands there puzzled, feeling this was hardly an ideal introduction. Elsewhere in Seoul, citizens carried on with their ordinary routines, though their phones rarely left their hands. A single incident had seized global attention, one that was being dubbed Judgment Day. Arguments spread non-stop across the worldwide gaming community. People demanded to know who had slain 800,000 players, wondering if he was a war deity or the supreme force in Chrono Life. Still, one man insisted the whole thing was fabricated. He argued that no one could truly be that powerful, and that it must be a glitch or a vile hacker. His reasoning sounded logical, since battling 3 million foes was beyond belief. Such figures could not be conquered by stats or skill alone. Outraged players demanded justice, calling for a permanent ban and urging the Chrono Life developers to take action. All eyes were fixed on the company, as everyone awaited an official reply. At last, a statement was released, while some players metaphorically sharpened their blades. Chrono Life team confirmed that the player involved was entirely legitimate. Their investigation concluded he had neither hacked nor exploited bugs. The revelation stunned the community and effectively ended the uproar. Conversations about the incident echoed throughout the streets. Game server had even crashed because of that single individual. Reports claimed he eliminated countless opponents in mere moments. Speculation ran wild about what he might be like outside the game, especially since the only image showed him cloaked with his face hidden. At that very moment, Jiwoo wore a faint smile. As he trailed behind the girl he had rescued earlier, the quiet between them was broken only by their footsteps. Clearly annoyed, Kian suddenly halted, spun around, and demanded to know why he kept tailing her. Jiwoo answered calmly that they should create a hunting party together. When did I ever say yes to that, she shot back, telling him to team up with someone as shabby and indecent as himself. Jiwoo was baffled by the insult. Kian pointed at his attire, saying he was practically in underwear under that cloak and wielding a beginner's level 1 stick. She scoffed that she had no time to babysit a newbie and told him to disappear. Jiwoo protested, asking what she meant by indecent since he had just saved her by wiping out the monsters in one strike. Eurus remarked internally that he had witnessed everything. Dragon noted that the human's eyes were shut when he rescued her. Jiwoo suddenly understood that she had no idea how strong he truly was. A sly grin appeared as he considered concealing his abilities for the time being. He hurried after Kian and called out to her, "Miss, please let me tag along." She glanced at him in confusion. Jiwoo admitted he knew nothing about the game and begged her as a beginner to guide him, addressing her respectfully as master. Being called master ignited a spark of delight in Kian. She recalled how her former party leader had belittled her, so hearing that title made her visibly thrilled. Eurus wondered what his master was up to, and Jiwoo murmured that pretending weakness was the first move in his strategy. The dragon remembered the scheme he had once suggested. Kian cleared her throat, attempting to appear composed. She awkwardly stated that although it was embarrassing, someone like her should assist beginners. After that, she allowed him to join her party. She declared that this seasoned player would mentor him, but only this once. Kian was a level 24 fighter who invested all her points into strength while ignoring other stats. They stood near the dungeon gate outside the beginner town. Kian dashed toward a shrieking monster. She drove a heavy punch into its body, causing the level 4 rabbit bear to cough up blood. The beast was hurled backward from the impact. Before it could recover, another creature lunged from behind. Kian evaded with a swift and nimble. She exhales sharply and twists into a mid-air somersault. The rabbit bear tilts its head upward in alarm. She drops down with a poised kick. Her fallen dragon stomp crashes down, slamming the monster into the earth. Remaining rabbit bears hesitate in confusion. Soon enough, they gather themselves and encircle her. Kian steadies herself in a combat stance, She provokes them, inviting them all to challenge their master simultaneously. Seated on the ground, Jiwoo quietly observes everything unfolding. He thinks to himself that she is actually quite skilled in combat, and Eurus nods in agreement with his human. Still, the protagonist remarks that even weak monsters can pose a threat when they swarm in large numbers. Eurus responds that there is little cause for concern, because that human is equipped with outstanding items. He mentions that her weapon alone is worth nearly 10 million gold, and Jiwoo gasps, translating that into 10 million won. Eurus continues, saying her entire equipment set is top tier and likely totals around $100 million, leaving Jiwoo baffled as to how a supposed beginner could afford such gear. The dragon then explains that she is the type of player who pays to dominate the game. Jiwoo recalls Kian yelling that others lacked taste and failed to recognize the value of her equipment, and she had poured an enormous amount of money into the game. He questions whether anyone would truly spend that much, thinking investing 100 million makes little sense. All at once, Kian spins around and shouts at Jiwoo. He scolds him, saying that even if she is carrying him, he cannot just sit idle and must at least swing that stick of his. Jiwoo blinks in confusion. He continues lecturing that only by fighting himself can he grow stronger and faster, telling him to stop acting like dead weight. While she keeps reprimanding him, a rabbit bear sneaks up behind her. Yet she remains unaware and keeps criticizing his lack of ambition as Jiwoo casually taps the monster with his. The creature is instantly obliterated, vanishing as if it had never existed. Kian glances around in confusion, wondering why a sudden breeze swept through the dungeon, while Jiwoo inwardly panics about how to conceal his strength. Just then, a notification pops up for Kian. The message tells her to log out immediately because something is starting in 10 minutes. She reads the alert and lets out a long breath, informing Jiwoo that she will log off briefly and return in about half an hour. She instructs him to continue hunting in the meantime. Jiwoo wonders what kind of person leaves whenever they please and speculates about her real life, questioning what she does to afford spending 100 million, while Eurus guesses she may have grown up wealthy. The scene transitions to an opulent building. Inside one of its rooms, Kian lies on her bed wearing a VR headset. She disconnects from chrono life. Rising from the bed with a sigh, she stares at the device, reflecting on recent events. A faint smile appears as she recalls the protagonist. Suddenly, the door swings open, and her producer barges in, yelling at her like a madwoman. The producer angrily demands to know why she is still using that device, and accuses her of wanting to quit her career. Kian snaps back that she was just about to remove it, and tells the producer to look properly, only to be branded a hopeless gaming addict. The producer orders her to hurry and take her seat since less than 10 minutes remain. She also scolds her for wearing glasses with the headset again, reminding her it leaves marks on her nose. Kian argues that she feels uneasy without her glasses and insists makeup can easily cover any marks. The producer responds with an icy glare and exhales in frustration, muttering that she is troublesome but must sit down quickly. She grumbles that if not for the money involved, she would have strangled her by now. The makeup kit is set out on the table, and the producer removes Kian's glasses, swiftly getting her ready for the show. The girl takes off her hair tie, allowing her hair to cascade freely. On the stage of a music program, the host enthusiastically thanks the audience for waiting and announces the final performance of Music Bank. She has secured first place for 13 straight weeks, a beloved idol and the leading singer-songwriter of the era. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Han Sarang. Sarang begins performing a song about her first love. After finishing, she greets the crowd and introduces herself politely. Han Sarang is known as an idol, vocalist, and songwriter, though secretly she enjoys online games. Back inside the dungeon, rabbit bears charge toward Jiwoo. Jiwoo remarks that he needs more practice before she returns. Eurus asks what sort of training he intends to do. Jiwoo explains that to conceal his true power, he must master precise control, meaning he plans to strike without killing his targets. Vision appears of a colossal explosion, spreading outward from a planet. A godlike entity observes the scene with amusement, comments that attacking without causing death sounds entertaining. Turning toward a maternal figure with a radiant sun behind her, he asks if she shares his opinion. Han Sarang is a sophomore in high school. She debuted in the entertainment world at a young age and struggled through an unrecognized beginning. Now she stands firmly as the nation's top singer-songwriter. A reporter congratulates her, astonished that she has claimed first place 14 consecutive times. He praises the sorrowful lyrics of her debut, inspired by The Little Mermaid, and asks how she crafts such touching words. Sarang answers that she enjoys spending time alone at home reading poetry and occasionally fairy tales. The journalist suggests that explains the song's title, and she adds that her producer prefers she not mention the fairy tale aspect because it might seem childish and embarrassing. The interviewer appears delighted, as does the captivated audience. He remarks how fascinating this is, and Sarang expresses her gratitude. Watching from afar, Her producer grumbles that the sly girl is deceiving the entire nation with a ridiculous lie. In truth, her hidden pastime is an obsession with gaming. During the interview, the host mentions her popularity in acting and brings up her intriguing role in a recent drama, where she portrayed a rebellious high school student. Sarang admits the role was challenging for her, since she had never uttered a single curse in her life. In the game world, she behaves entirely differently, calling Jiwoo a damn jerk. She scolds him for failing to greet his master upon her return. Jiwoo asks in bewilderment when she became his master. Sarang loudly declares that it starts from this moment. She teases him, asking if he is complaining about being carried, but he hurriedly denies it, as gaming is her way to relieve daily stress. Eurus advises his Hunim to cut ties with such a rude individual. Jiwoo refuses, explaining he must continue pretending to be weak to conceal his strength. Sarang then commands him to repeat the phrase, "lovely master." She makes him say it over and over while Eurus reflects that his strategy succeeded. As they head toward the dungeon, Sarang pauses to ask whether he trained hard by hunting monsters. Jiwoo sighs and says the process demands immense patience and that he still has a long way to go. Eurus complains that striking without damage is pointless, but Jiwoo tells him to be quiet. Sarang chuckles, calling him a peculiar rookie and saying she finds it amusing. He realizes she never asked his name and inquires about the character name of the underpants guy. Jiwoo is startled, thinking he already told her, and tries to introduce himself, but she cuts him off and declares she will simply call him Underpants. She says it suits him well, leaving Jiwoo annoyed as he questions why she asked for his name at all. Not far away, several figures observe the duo secretly. A bearded man announces that he has located her. One of his men asks what their next move should be. The leader orders them to assemble every guild member in the dungeon, because today they will seek justice. Ahead of them, a rabbit bear rises up. The level 22 beast advances toward the Sarang commands Underpants to take action. The protagonist complies obediently, trotting toward the monster like a loyal. As both sides shout, he deliberately acts clueless, stumbling forward as if he were completely incompetent. He then slowly extends his staff ahead of him, carefully brushing just a single strand of fur on the beast. In an instant, the rabbit bear is injured, its skull crushed in a brutal blow. Confused and unaware of what happened, it collapses to the floor. Its health does not drop to zero, leaving a thin sliver of HP. Jiwoo smiles in relief seeing it still alive, concluding that his non-lethal attack experiment worked perfectly. Sarang cheers, praising him for defeating it in one attempt and saying he has improved a lot. Out of nowhere, a dagger hurtles toward her. Sarang senses the incoming threat. She swiftly grabs Jiwoo's shirt and yanks him aside, kicking the blade away with precise timing. The bearded attacker snatches his dagger back midair. Twisting his face, he remarks that she is impressive but credits her equipment for it. Sarang demands to know his identity. The man, Mr. Kim, pretends to be offended and asks if she has already forgotten his voice. He announces that everyone present belongs to the Hallison Guild. Hearing the name, Sarang repeats it with clear disdain. Kim chuckles that it has been a while and questions what the two are scheming. He then commands his men to launch their attack. Sarang tells Jiwoo to stay back because it is dangerous. She shifts into a ready combat stance. The assassins rush in with blades drawn. With lightning speed, she drives a kick straight into one man's face. Blood sprays as he collapses unconscious. Using his falling body as leverage, Sarang springs upward, spinning gracefully in midair. He calls out the technique, Fallen Dragon Stomp, slamming into the ground and blasting the assassins away, as their leader orders an all-out assault. Watching quietly, Jiwoo asks what is going on and Eurus admits he has no idea. Jiwoo says he can more or less piece it together from the situation. He reasons that the Hallison Guild has clashed with Sarang before and has repeatedly lost despite several attempts. Apparently, their leader refuses to give up and has returned yet again for revenge. Jiwoo notes they are around level 20 and far too weak for her, and Eurus agrees. As the battle drags on, Kim mutters that everything is unfolding as expected. With Sarang occupied, he gestures for another woman to move. The new figure disappears with a swift dash, reappearing directly behind Sarang. Extending clawed hands toward her, Sarang spins around and notices the opponent carries no weapon, assuming she is a fighter type. The woman activates a skill called Steal. A flash of light floods the area, temporarily blinding Sarang. She gasps in disbelief when she realizes her battle gauntlets have vanished entirely. The thief praises the quality of the stolen weapons, mocking that Darling must be rich to own the silencing fist. Jiwoo asks about the skill, and Eurus explains it belongs to the rogue class as Steal, though he finds it odd, since the ability should not be so overwhelming. Jiwoo shrugs, saying he has nothing valuable anyway aside from his cloak and underwear. And he suddenly remembers his staff. He glances sideways with a nervous grin. Jumping up, he bolts away while screaming dramatically. Kim comments that he almost forgot there was another person, but that rookie is insignificant. One glance shows the kid has nothing worth taking. As Jiwoo retreats further, the thief's eyes sparkle with excitement. She tosses the stolen fists toward Kim, laughing that robbing someone with nothing is actually more entertaining. In a blink she stands before Jiwoo, teasingly asking where he thinks he is running off to. Darling. Startled as she targets him, Jiwoo realizes this is not the time to hold back. He grips the staff tightly and swings in a swift strike. Yet to his shock, nothing occurs. Everyone freezes in disbelief, including Eurus, as the smoke fades. Jiwoo finds his hands empty and his primary weapon missing. Thief calmly tells him the stick now belongs to her, causing cold sweat to bead on his forehead. She threatens to take his hood next, warning he will be naked except for his underwear. Suddenly, a dark shadow covers her face. She looks up in confusion. Beholds Eurus, revealing his true form. The being demands how a mere mortal dares wield him without understanding who he is. Terrified beyond measure, the girl collapses to the ground, dropping the staff at Jiwoo's feet. Jiwoo retrieves his stick, as the system declares that Eurus's soul rejects the enemy and acknowledges only him as its master. Eurus manifests from the staff, declaring that none may claim him except his true lord Hunim. Clearly the thief had misjudged her limits. Jiwoo casually scratches his head, then pats the dragon gently, making Eurus flush with embarrassment. The thief continues shaking in fear, coughing nervously as she retreats from Jiwoo, completely unable to comprehend what just occurred. She questions whether it was a ghost, but dismisses it since it felt far too real. Kim angrily asks what she is doing and whether she has forgotten her task. Thief rises and snaps that she would never forget, since she is a professional mercenary, driven solely by money. At that instant, Sarang rushes forward shouting, attempting to kick the thief, demanding her weapon back, and calling her a petty criminal. The thief dodges smoothly, laughing that the surprise attack nearly startled her. He adds that Sarang is targeting the wrong person because the weapon is elsewhere. Observing everything, Kim clenches his fists with a satisfied. Sarang curses them and vows to kill them all. But suddenly she begins to collapse, losing consciousness after a light touch from Jiwoo. Jiwoo calmly explains that this is his technique called strike without killing. The baffled thief demands to know what he is doing and whether they were not supposed to be on the same side. Jiwoo answers calmly that he had merely been concealing his true strength. He stares at him and swears, asking what nonsense he is spouting. Before she can react further, a surge of force slams into her. A heartbeat, every assassin is effortlessly taken down. The thief can only gape at the unbelievable scene. She asks in disbelief if Darling was the one responsible. Jiwoo lightly taps her head with his staff and answers, "Yes, it was me," as her health drops to a single remaining bar. Activating strike without killing once more, Jiwoo adds, "I have endured plenty of hardships, so my mind has grown far stronger. Just now, because of you, I almost panicked trying to move my staff." His energy erupts outward, ravaging everything nearby. Sarang regains consciousness, finding herself lying in an open meadow. She looks around in confusion, rising to her feet, startled by the unfamiliar surroundings. From behind a tree, Jiwoo casually asks if she is finally awake. Shocked, she calls him Panty Boy and demands to know where they are and what became of those men. Jiwoo tells her they are close to the dungeon and that the enemies have already retreated. She presses him for answers, asking why she suddenly lost consciousness. Only then does Sarang notice the gauntlets in her hands. Realizing her weapons have somehow been returned, Jiwoo asks whether the attackers were from the Hallasan Guild, curious about what kind of group they are and what their objective might be. The question makes her cheeks flush slightly. She wonders why he is acting so considerate and whether he has some ulterior motive. Soon she exhales with a faint smile, deciding to explain since he was dragged into the trouble because of her. She begins by asking if he has heard the phrase pay to win. Jiwoo admits he has no idea what that means. Eurus chimes in that it is a common term in online gaming. Jiwoo questions how a mere NPC knows such modern slang. Eurus replies proudly that he searched it on Wikipedia. He starts reciting the definition word for word until Sarang cuts him off and simplifies it. It just refers to players who dump massive amounts of money into games. Jiwoo asks if the Hallasan Guild fits that description, and she confirms that they all do. She explains that months ago she obtained those gauntlets at an auction, and since then the guild has targeted her to seize them. They may be older troublemakers with poor skills, but she has beaten them every time. When he asks how she recovered the fists, Jiwoo shrugs and says the enemies simply left them behind as if forgot. Sarang admits she does not know what happened, but is certain that the obsessed old leader will pursue her again. Jiwoo remarks that it feels odd and wonders why they are so desperate for her weapon. He replies that the reason is obvious, since the fists are worth 10 million gold. Jiwoo counters that this makes it even stranger because billionaires should not fixate on a mere 10 million item, implying there must be another motive. Later the scene shifts to the Hallasan Guild headquarters. Kim lies bleeding heavily as crimson stains the floor. Collapsing before the guild leader, apologizes repeatedly and begs for one more opportunity. The leader silences him harshly and calls them all incompetent. He declares that he will entrust the task to the 4 heavenly kings. Kim nervously glances aside. 3 figures step forward to stand before their master. The 2nd heavenly king sneers that someone with only 100 million gold should not share their division. The third king remarks that they advised expelling little Kim earlier, but that great Young Nim was too lenient. The first heavenly king remains wordless. The second king kneels beside Kim, mocking his decision to hire a mercenary and blaming that foolish tactic for the failure. The first king interrupts and says he will personally handle it, running his hand through his hair. He mentions the silencing fist will activate within 12 hours. Hearing this, the leader erupts into loud, manic laughter, boasting proudly of his title Lord King and his immense fortune of 12 billion. He orders his men to demonstrate the terror of the Hallasan Guild. Thus the so-called Blood Festival begins. Yet at that very moment, Jiwoo appears inside their base, quietly rubbing his nose. Everyone turns toward him in utter confusion. Jiwoo mocks them openly, scoffing that children giggling about a blood festival are ridiculous. Annoyed, the king demands to know who he is and how he entered. Jiwoo casually tells them to figure it out themselves. In blatant contempt, he picks his nose. He muses that continuing to hide his power will be troublesome if they keep harassing Sarang. Laughing again at their grandiose titles, he declares he will finish this quickly. Furious, the king calls him insane and orders the men to kill him. The subordinates rush in unleashing their strongest techniques, charging at him with terrifying speed. Jiwoo merely smiles calmly. With one casual swing of his staff, a massive wave of power bursts forth and wipes them out. They fall defeated by what seems like nothing more than a twig. Inside the building, a young woman walks closer while humming happily. Back inside, the first heavenly king lunges at Jiwoo, only to be beaten down by a single effortless strike. Blood spilling from his mouth, suddenly a violent explosion tears the mansion apart. The approaching goddess of life pauses in surprise and smiles knowingly as she recognizes the culprit. The Lord King roars for every remaining guild member to attack together. Confronting this new wave, Jiwoo releases a weary sigh. Tightening his grip on the staff, he remarks that if they truly intend to kill him, they should bring at least 3 million fighters. He swings his staff again, striking an assassin square in the face, triggering a blast that shoots skyward. Smiling faintly, Jiwoo sweeps his twig to the right, clearing out everyone in that direction. The king watches in horror, his expression twisted in fear. As he struggles up, Kim shouts for his Hunim to flee before he is destroyed. The king believes Kim misunderstands, since aside from him and his closest aides, all members are paid to win elites. Even the newest recruit invested at least $10 million, making them a force not even the top 5 guilds would dare belittle. Who exactly was this man, and how was he capable of such overwhelming feats? All at once, the king comes to a realization. He concludes they have absolutely no chance of winning. Perhaps this is the rumored player who crushed everyone in his path. Gazing at Jiwoo in sheer terror, his jaw drops as he recalls the stick-wielding underwear guy. He had first begun gaming back in elementary school. In those days, games were simple and grinding levels was tough, since quests and raids did not exist. Even so, 9-year-old Wang found endless joy in it. He remembers being scolded for sneaking games at night, and fondly recalls leveling with friends. As time passed, he matured and became consumed by duties, too busy to look back on those memories. For he knew it, he was in his 40s, and people now addressed him as CEO Wang. He sits before a computer, inside an immaculate office. One of his aides steps inside, addressing him as Hyung Nim, and informing him the old monitor he requested has been located. Wang wanted to reward himself with a relic of the past after years of relentless work. The aide questions the need for outdated hardware, since the game runs fine on modern machines. But Wang insists it is about recreating the atmosphere. His pulse quickens as if he has traveled back in time. It feels like reuniting with a first love. He clenches his teeth upon realizing something painful. Time had altered him just as much as it changed the games. Jiwoo swings his staff again, striking another subordinate. The man slams violently into the ground. A massive shockwave rattles the surroundings. The king stands motionless, shaking at the devastation before his eyes. Jiwoo remarks that it is nearly finished, with only the 2 of them remaining. The king cannot utter a word. As Jiwoo advances step by step, he muses that this is the downfall of pay to win players and questions why they resort to stealing others' gear, especially for so-called nobles. Perhaps the old man deserves a lesson. The king recalls sitting at his desk, typing rapidly, until confirmation of his $12 billion payment appeared. Wang repeats that he was not the only one reshaped by the passing years. With enough money and a few clicks, he could gain immense power while ordinary players suffered. This was the reality of pay to win gaming. Wang rises from his seat. He continued trying countless titles, yet they all felt identical. At last he turned to the most praised game of all, Chrono Life, hoping to rediscover something long lost. Something from his childhood days. Jiwoo's staff closes in and strikes his head, activating strike without killing once more. Wang coughs blood and collapses, defeated. Kim desperately calls out to his Hyung Nim. Jiwoo declares that from this day forward, the Hallasan Guild is finished, and warns them never to trouble Captain Amber again. Saying he has no desire to see them ever again, he turns to leave. Wang struggles to push himself up, asking whether it truly was him, the player who recently crushed the 5 great guilds, and wiped out 3 million members of the World Guild. Jiwoo glances back silently. Wang bursts into laughter at the sight, wondering aloud how much money Jiwoo must have invested to gain such power. Soon he will understand that he fought for something hollow all along. From afar, Kim stares at his Hayoung Nim. Jiwoo answers bluntly that he has no clue what nonsense Wang is talking about, though he did spend some money. Wang presses for the amount, imagining it must be tens or hundreds of billions. Jiwoo replies casually that he paid 5501 for the warrior's starter pack. Wang is utterly stunned. Left without words, Jiwoo resumes walking away. Wang smiles, faintly repeating the figure 550. Memories of childhood flood back. Of the days he played Ragnarok, he begins laughing with genuine excitement. His sudden laughter leaves Kim baffled. Wang asks how many games they tried after Ragnarok, and Kim estimates around 8. The boss keeps laughing, declaring that Chrono Life truly is a masterpiece. The goddess of life appears, confirming his words. He greets the Hallasan Guild, saying what a lovely evening it is. Surveying the room, she remarks that the hideout looks dreadful. She turns and asks whether the preparation of that item was completed. Wang says progress was steady, but she interrupts, questioning why he dwells on the past. He admits he lost focus and states their alliance ends here. The goddess pauses in surprise, then smiles calmly and says, "Is that so?" With a swift sweep of her scepter, she cuts through the air. Kim watches in horror, his mouth agape, as Wang collapses, his body severed in two. The subordinate attempts to shout his boss's name, crying out desperately for his Hayoung Nim. The goddess of life walks forward without haste. She mutters that she should have asked his reason, but she is not in the mood. She drives her staff into Kim's back, blood splattering across her face. Kim screams in agony and shock. He tries to move, yet is swiftly overpowered. Goddess surveys the carnage, a faint smile curling on her lips. As she recalls the protagonist's words, his hair darkens, and his attire returns to normal. He softly utters the name Amr. His kill count displays 998, 99,999. The system announces the destruction of the Hallasan Guild and begins calculating battle experience. Total increases to 999, 0 kills. Jiwoo looks puzzled at the notification. Another message declares he has reached the maximum level. "What is this nonsense?" he mutters, while Eurus asks what happened. "Didn't you hear that the system said I hit the level cap?" Opening his status window, he sees his class listed as novice at level 999, with nearly 5,000 unused points. Both he and Eurus stare blankly, unable to comprehend the situation. Chrono Life, the top-ranked virtual reality game in users' subscriptions, revenue, and ratings, reaching the maximum level was believed impossible. During a past interview, Lee Sang-hya, better known as Faker in the pro-gaming scene, remarked that accomplishing such a milestone anytime soon would be virtually impossible. Even with gamers worldwide grinding non-stop, day and night, nobody had succeeded in climbing to level 999, the pinnacle tier. Faker admitted he couldn't say for sure, yet believed that even if every top-ranked player, himself included, hunted monsters around the clock, it would still require decades to pull off. Jiwoo was utterly baffled that his stats had climbed to such an extreme height. Meanwhile, Eurus was overjoyed, celebrating his status as the first master-level player on the planet. As expected from Hyung Nim, his pride was on full display. Jiwoo clearly remembered being only level 7 at that time. The outcome was simply the natural consequence of everything he had done. The very first day he wielded the stick, 800 players lost their lives, not to mention the countless monsters and dungeons obliterated in his assault. Not to forget the massive experience gained from defeating Chrono Life's ultimate boss, Eurus, along with the forces stationed in the highest-tier dungeon. Decisive boost came after he slaughtered 3 million members of the World Guild Alliance. Naturally, the annihilation of the entire planet counted as well. That was how the first-level master in history came into existence. A radiant glow formed beneath the main character's feet, casting bright light over everything in the vicinity. The system declared that since he had attained the highest possible level, the player would now be transferred to a transcendent realm, instantly relocating him elsewhere. In another part of the city, Sarang was stretched out on the ground, staring blankly at the sky with nothing to occupy her. She muttered in annoyance that she was bored and that the whole situation was seriously irritating. Rising to her feet, she wondered where that underwear-clad jerk had disappeared to. He had asked her to wait a moment, yet dusk had already fallen. She paused to reflect a little longer, recalling that he had brought up the Hallasan Guild, and that she was meant to report everything about them to him. Sarang let out a deep sigh and flopped back down, shouting that whatever happened, this kind master would give him 1 more hour. On a chunk of land drifting through outer space, Jiwoo suddenly realized he was standing at the heart of an unfamiliar temple. He questioned his current location, gazing upward in total confusion. Wondered why he kept being dragged from place to place lately, just like when he encountered God and died. Out of nowhere, a voice greeted the human child. It expressed surprise at meeting again so quickly and called him truly remarkable. The voice reverberated powerfully, causing the surroundings to tremble. The entity introduced himself as the guide of transcendence and the deity overseeing classes, offering his welcome. He commended Jiwoo for taking the first step along such a grueling path, adding that reaching master level, while still a novice, was an accomplishment deserving universal admiration. Eurus asked how that could be possible and whether Jiwoo had forgotten to switch classes, but Jiwoo denied it, saying he had once aimed to become a prosecutor. At that instant, the requirements were fulfilled and the evolution into a hidden class commenced. A blinding radiance enveloped his body. His multiple orbs materialized before him. One orb transformed into the emblem of a sword and lunged forward, striking him at incredible speed. The essence of the sword seeped into his being. Soon, additional spheres symbolizing different weapons appeared. The spirits of the shield, bow, staff, gauntlets, spear, and many more entered him sequentially. Every weapon's spirit had now fused within his body. Jiwoo sensed energy surging through him as the system announced the class transformation was complete, declaring him a masterclass novice. The bonus, all previously assigned stat points would be reclaimed and then multiplied by 3. His status window abruptly began to shift. Each attribute reset to the base value of 5 and 15 unallocated points appeared. Eurus was left utterly stunned. 14,985 points. What on earth is going on? This be entirely due to the class change bonuses. Jiwoo asked if that was more shocking than obtaining a secret class, and Eurus replied yes, explaining that leveling up usually grants only 5 points, not 15. Even compared to other max-level players, your base stat points are already triple theirs. This is insane. It might go down as the most remarkable feat in gaming history. Paying no attention to the dragon, Jiwoo started carefully reviewing the numbers. Cold grin slowly formed on his lips as he began pouring every point into a single attribute, clicking again and again. Young Nim, what are you doing? Eurus asked in disbelief. I'm allocating my stats, Jiwoo answered evenly. I can see that, but I mean this reckless way of doing it. Waste even 1 point and you'll look like a fool. The dragon's face twisted into sheer panic. Why are you dumping everything into one attribute? And of all choices, why that one? Jiwoo completed the distribution of every last point and stated that he didn't require anything else for now. This alone was sufficient. You've ruined it all, Eurus protested, calling him a complete idiot. Chrono Life headquarters. A staff member burst in to alert the president about a serious issue. Doc Bay asked what had occurred. The employee responded that he needed to witness it personally, since it involved that specific player. Inside the control room, Diak Bay stepped forward and asked for an explanation. Subordinate merely gestured toward the monitor. Diak Bay's eyes widened in surprise. The stick kid has finally hit the maximum level. The employee clarified that the level itself wasn't the concern, but rather his actions. It's causing such an uproar. And which stat did he pick? Diak Bay inquired. The employee indicated the display, revealing the selected stat, which caught the president's attention. Soon, however, Diak Bay burst out laughing, saying the kid truly adored the game and was savoring it in his own style. The employee argued it wasn't a laughing matter, insisting the build would be utterly useless and meaningless. If he discovers he has created a worthless character, who knows how he'll react in anger? Yakbay calmly told him to settle down, repeating that the company had no authority to meddle with a player's decisions. The employee continued insisting that some form of intervention was necessary, but the president had already turned and walked off. As he left, Diak reflected in disbelief that the boy had invested everything into a single stat and still secured the novice master title. He found it absurd that they labeled it a hopeless trash character, because in truth, the most flawed yet potentially most powerful avatar in VR history had just come into being. Back within the game world, Jiwoo wrapped up his stat assignment wearing a satisfied smile. The god of classes appeared once more and said, Transcendent One, pay attention. This marks the final stage of guidance. You must make a crucial decision. You are granted the right to claim one of my transcendental weapons. Jiwoo's face lit up with excitement. Luck, if it costs nothing, there's no reason to refuse. He pondered which weapon he ought to select because, honestly, each one looked astonishingly powerful, and he took a few seconds to think it over. After a brief pause, he revealed the choice he had made. Extending his hand forward, Jiwoo declared boldly, hand over every single. The godlike entity remained silent for a moment. Then it addressed the human child, explaining that such a demand could not be granted. Boundless greed invites needless disaster, so choose with care. Jiwoo interrupted coldly, asking whether it would surrender everything peacefully or prefer to be beaten first. All those observing were stunned beyond belief. In the control room, Diak slowly removed his cigar, utterly dumbfounded as he thought that this man was completely insane. The god of classes offered no verbal reply. A system alert appeared, announcing his overwhelming rage. The deity's face twisted dramatically. Connection shifted into hostility as the god advanced to attack. Gripping his staff, Jiwoo remarked that he understood, since the god was clearly asking to be thrashed. Both prepared themselves as a shield suddenly shot toward him. Jiwoo raised his staff to block the incoming strike. Even so, the impact was so powerful that it slammed him straight into the ground. Eurus cried out in alarm for his hewn nim. God of Classes sighed regretfully, saying he never imagined he would personally kill a transcendent and calling it a shame. Without warning, a surge of energy from the staff hit him directly, burning away half of his face. The crater, Jiwoo muttered that it actually hurt and wondered if it was because his opponent was a god. His HP bar had barely dipped, since his constitution had skyrocketed to 15 points. That stat governed maximum health, regeneration speed, and resistance to negative effects. Horus stared in disbelief at the unfolding scene, thinking he must be crazy to invest every single point into one attribute. Young Neem, you've made a terrible blunder and built a useless character, he shouted, but Jiwoo simply asked why. Eurus explained that every item in Chrono Life required a certain amount of strength to equip, regardless of class. In short, he wouldn't be able to wield anything except that flimsy stick, but Jiwoo calmly replied that it was all he needed. Right then, a system window materialized between them. Concealed ability had been unlocked, as all its requirements were satisfied. Eurus asked what the skill was. The ability, called Healing Factor, transformed any damage taken into instant recovery, restoring his HP to full in a blink. A useless build, you say, Jiwoo mocked, while Eurus stood speechless. God of Classes groaned with his ruined face and spat out, "Insignificant more. How dare you challenge me?" he bellowed, firing brilliant beams from his eyes. Jiwoo faced the assault directly, making no attempt to evade, as he was knocked down again. Eurus dashed toward him, yelling out his Haiyan Nim's name. Jiwoo only laughed loudly, saying that Chrono Life truly was an amazing game. Shouted as his chest regenerated completely. Horus felt disgusted watching the spectacle. "Die, you corrupted worm," the god roared while unleashing relentless strikes. Jiwoo absorbed every single blow without resistance. His HP would briefly decline, then instantly return to maximum. The God of Classes continued attacking endlessly in a pointless repetition. Jiwoo endured it all without flinching, laughing the entire time. His health bar kept falling and refilling without end. Eventually, he stated that it was enough, and he would finish the fight. After all, he had gained quite a lot thanks to this god, so it was time for the enemy to surrender every weapon and vanish. But the God of Classes warned that such limitless greed would one day destroy him. Jiwoo simply readied his final move, declaring that he didn't care about such warnings. He swung his staff upward in a fierce arc, striking the God of Classes directly. A system message announced that the God of Classes had been eliminated. Surrounding space began to crack apart, splintering into countless fragments. The system informed him that the transcendent realm was collapsing, and he would be returned to his original world. That dimension steadily shrank, until it completely sealed shut. Back in the regular world of Chrono Life, a beam of light descended upon the hill, depositing Jiwoo back onto the ground. Numerous weapons clattered around him, each one a transcendent artifact, and Jiwoo had become the rightful owner of them all. They shimmered brightly before being stored within a subspace, ready to respond whenever he summoned them. Jiwoo smiled, thinking how advantageous this would be. Meanwhile, Sarang was fuming with anger. How dare that brat keep her waiting? No excuse would save him. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Jiwoo touched his forehead and greeted her casually, saying he had returned. Her fist immediately connected with his face. She followed up with a kick, scolding him for making her wait until nightfall. Jiwoo apologized, explaining he expected to return sooner but had been delayed, though he was here now. Sarang clenched her teeth tightly and shouted that she was logging out. When Jiwoo asked where she was headed, she replied that she was quitting the game for the night, casually waved goodbye, while she gritted her teeth yet held back. She warned him to log in tomorrow at 7 p.m. after work, threatened to kill him for real if he showed up late again. Jiwoo watched as she disappeared from the game world, remarking that she always did as she pleased, while Eurus inquired about the recent events. Jiwoo stood and announced he would also log out, since it was past midnight outside the game. The system asked for confirmation to log out, and Jiwoo agreed. In the identity room outside, Jiwoo stepped out as the staff member thanked him and invited him back anytime. He yawned softly, thinking it had been an excellent day and that Chrono Life was incredibly enjoyable. He also began considering how much he could sell those transcendent weapons for. As the first of their kind, they would likely fetch an enormous price. Still, he wondered whether they were tradable, since it would be disappointing if he couldn't put them on the market. His gaze shifted to a small restaurant behind him, and he considered ordering a bowl of gukbat. But after checking his empty wallet, he decided to give up the idea. He walked on feeling weary, reflecting bitterly on how exhausting it was to live without money. Subscription cost of the game kept increasing, meaning he would have to take on extra hours at his part-time job. While wandering through the city streets, he abruptly halted. "Hold on a second," he murmured under his breath. He recalled Eurus saying the full gear set would cost 10 million at first, and the remaining pieces would push it to 100 million won. A thought flashed through his head. What if he sold in-game items and converted them into real cash? Realizing this possibility, Jiwoo spun around and sprinted back toward the identity room. Every top-ranked player in Chrono Life was aware of a restricted zone, known as the Crossroads of Life and the Tomb of Mortals. It was the highest-level hunting ground ever created, unconquered and mysteriously hidden from the public. And it was there in the Undead Valley, territory of Eurus, that Jiwoo now appeared. Eurus, impeccably dressed like a refined butler, welcomed Jiwoo into his domain. The hunter ignored him completely and kept walking forward, grin forming as he announced he would be taking care of things personally. Eurus nodded politely and invited Hyun Nim to enjoy himself to the fullest. Jiwoo admitted he had been so obsessed with revenge that he forgot to collect the loot he left behind. But today, he intended to put it to good use. The dragon Eurus quietly pitied his unfortunate subordinates. Without warning, a massive surge of energy crashed down over the area. From within the smoke, Eurus's forces emerged and surrounded Jiwoo, yet he only smiled. That instant, he felt his days of struggle were finally ending. He was about to earn an absurd amount of money and become wealthy in a single stroke. The Ghost Valley, the ultimate hunting ground, was wiped out entirely by a single swing of his stick. Turbid of Despair and Lapis of the Abyss, along with Trishan of the Dawn, the three elite commanders of Eurus's army, vanished just as effortlessly. With merely 2 strikes, every monster in the valley was destroyed. Their weapons clattered onto the ground. Priceless loot poured down like rain. Eurus remarked that it had ended in a flash and that the profits were impressive. Jiwoo disagreed, saying this was not the end but only the start. Puzzled, Eurus asked what he was talking about. Jiwoo pointed toward the lingering smoke and told him to watch closely. The monsters had already respawned, as slain creatures in this zone would return after a set period of time. However, unique bosses such as the 2-headed dragon Eurus would not revive. Jiwoo mentioned it was his first time selling loot, so he planned to repeat the process at least 100 times. Soon another explosion thundered across the valley. Years ago, a fascinating lecture was delivered at Harvard University. The professor asked if everyone knew Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, and once the richest man alive. He explained that if Bill Gates spotted $100 on the street while heading to work, he would not bother picking it up, and here was why. Doing so would actually cost him money. The few seconds needed to bend down would mean losing income, since he earned over $150 every second. Essentially, grabbing the bill would mean forfeiting around $200. In the Ghost Valley, circumstances were entirely different, with mountains of loot stacking up. Farming 100 waves, including cooldown time, took roughly an hour. Cooldown periods included. The combined value of all those items reached approximately 15 billion won. According to that lecture, Bill Gates earns about 500 million won per hour. In that single hour, a young Korean part-timer had surpassed the hourly earnings of the world's richest individual. Following day in Seoul, a Gucci sales associate bowed politely, thanking Jiwoo for his purchase and inviting him to visit again. He exited the boutique dressed in an outfit costing over $301, after also purchasing a new car and various luxury items. Passers-by gazed at him with amazement, some whispering that it was their first time seeing a Lamborghini up close. Jiwoo removed his 2 million won sunglasses. As he sped away, told himself it was time to enjoy his wealth. He accelerated recklessly and promptly crashed into a street lamp. Staring in horror, he shouted about his 400 million won Lamborghini. Yet minutes later, he reappeared in another brand new car, shrugging that he could always buy a replacement. Meanwhile, at the Chrono Life headquarters, Deokbai ignited a costly cigar, rubbing his forehead as he muttered in frustration. He instructed the employee to proceed with the briefing, and the man complied. The report concluded that the company was in serious trouble and suggested fleeing, while Deokbai asked if blocking that man's transactions was possible, only to be told it was too late. The chairman continued complaining until his phone suddenly rang. He answered while grumbling about his misfortune. Jiwoo's cheerful voice greeted him from the other end, saying he was on his way to spend even more money and that the chairman must understand that feeling. Jiwoo teased further, suggesting he might perform a good deed and asking if the chairman needed financial help. Deokbai exploded in anger, blaming him for everything that had happened. Jiwoo sarcastically wondered if something was wrong before hanging up. He pondered what to purchase next, since he had already bought nearly everything. But he sensed that the true peak moment of his life had not arrived. Suddenly inspiration struck and his eyes widened. Preparing to drive off, he couldn't believe he had forgotten the most important acquisition. Inside a remarkably luxurious building, Jiwoo laughed in a dramatic, villainous manner, declaring that his penthouse was top tier and extravagantly furnished, and inviting everyone to visit his brand new residence. At last, he believed he had reached the pinnacle of his life, and he remembered the customary first step after moving in. Holding rice cakes, he pressed a neighbor's doorbell. A woman's voice from inside asked who was there. Jiwoo replied that he was the new neighbor and had brought rice cakes as a friendly gesture. The young woman sounded puzzled and politely asked him to wait. When the door opened, Jiwoo smiled and began saying he hoped they would get along well. but his words stopped abruptly when he recognized her. It turned out the penthouse was not the true highlight after all. Sarang stood there in the doorway. They locked eyes in stunned silence, instantly recalling their encounters in the game. This unexpected reunion became the real highlight of Jiwoo's day. Back in the game within the Ghost Valley, a mysterious figure appeared, halting before the entirety of Eurus's army. The being raised a single hand, and with cold detachment, slaughtered the entire army, reducing them to blood. Eurus's 3 strongest generals emerged, calling him a presumptuous human. As they charged toward the figure, the man merely scoffed that the fools failed to recognize their own master. 3 spikes erupted from his back as he unleashed his power. In an instant, Eurus's mightiest warriors were impaled and completely destroyed. The creature started draining them like a parasite, throwing the surrounding monsters into chaos. The entity stood still, convinced that everything before it deserved extinction. From that moment on, the 3 mightiest warriors of Eurus could no longer resurrect. System Alert declared that their levels and attributes had been absorbed. The records of Eurus's elite fighters were completely erased. The monster gazed at the scene with icy indifference, recalling the instant when Eurus lost his first head. Clenched its teeth as the memory resurfaced. When Eurus shifted into his soul state, he had questioned the whereabouts of the missing head. The entity then revealed who it truly was, the severed head of Eurus, being named Urakan, born to devastate humanity. At the same time, the industry's top idol Han Sarang, known as Amur in Chrono Life, made her appearance. Jiwoo was shocked upon seeing her, realizing it was his first real-world encounter with Captain Amur. Han Sarang thanked him warmly and said she would enjoy the rice cakes. Jiwoo stared at her in disbelief. It dawned on him that she was the famous Han Sarang, whom he had failed to recognize. The door shut as Sarang stepped back inside. Her older sister asked what she was holding, and Sarang replied it was a gift from the new neighbor. She glanced aside, feeling as though she had seen him somewhere before. She urged her sister to eat while the sister thanked her, neither realizing their in-game and real-life appearances were completely different. Her sister reminded her to hurry and change out of her uniform. Sarang grumbled that she had only been home for 30 minutes, and her sister teased that she could delay filming, though she had wanted to finish quickly to play the game. The idol suddenly remembered her promise to meet him online. She announced she just needed a quick outfit change. Her sister observed with an amused smile, convinced Sarang had clearly met someone special in the game, and wondering what kind of handsome guy had captured her heart. Inside the game, Jiwoo looked around, puzzled by the absence of monsters. He questioned whether they had fled, but Eurus insisted that was impossible. Monsters were confined by system rules to specific zones and could not escape. It was as though they had disappeared into thin. Jiwoo shrugged, thinking he could simply hunt elsewhere for profit, while Eurus reminded him about his appointment with that human, which Jiwoo confirmed was soon. Since the hunt had failed, it was best to leave, though he grumbled that they were far from the meeting place. Eurus glanced back uneasily, sensing a familiar yet dangerous aura in the somewhere else in the mountains. Elrose, the massive level 190 snow serpent boss, being drained by Urakan's terrifying power. Her levels and attributes were siphoned away. The dragon licked his lips, aware it still was not enough. He had yet to reach the strength he desired. To eliminate that human, much more power was required. At that moment, the goddess of life descended with radiant wings. She asked how he had managed to grow so strong, smiling as she remarked that her child always did have a hearty appetite. Without hesitation, Urakan's spike shot forward and impaled her. The goddess looked stunned. Urakan muttered it was still insufficient, though she appeared delicious. He attempted to absorb her as well. The goddess of life urged him to stop, but she was swallowed entirely, falling to the ground without form. However, a system message declared the absorption unsuccessful. Goddess reappeared cheerfully, saying she would scold him later for frightening his mother. She even teased him, asking if he was in the middle of puberty. Urakan wondered if it was illusion magic since he clearly devoured her, but she dismissed the question as irrelevant. Realizing she was not prey he could consume, he demanded to know her identity since they shared the same aura. Goddess of Life pointed toward a distant city, informing him that plenty of nourishment awaited there. She encouraged him to feast as much as he pleased. Urakan drooled eagerly. The goddess maintained her serene smile, observing as the dragon descended further into obsession. He unfurled his wings as though in trance, declaring himself Urukan, destined to wipe out humanity. He soared away into the distance, landing atop a structure within the city. Nearby players wondered what that monstrous figure was. Suddenly, a spike pierced one player through the chest. He was absorbed before his girlfriend's eyes. She screamed in horror and despair. Spikes rained down upon the rest of the players. They were devoured en masse by the dragon. The grotesque grin and drool dripping, he absorbed their levels and stats. The players had become nothing more than sustenance. The beginner village, a hub for newcomers and veterans alike, packed with fresh players and top rankers, was erased entirely by the dragon. The Chrono Life headquarters, a staff member rushed in, declaring an emergency. Complaints were flooding in through calls, reports, and live streams. leaving the support team overwhelmed. Staff said they were investigating and asked for patience, as characters being permanently deleted by a monster crossed all boundaries. Diak grumbled about the chaos unfolding, mockingly asking if Yorukan had finally appeared and whether everyone was enjoying themselves. The employee questioned how such a disaster could occur. Diak ordered that from now on they would monitor only 2 characters, starting with Yorukan. In the burning city, the dragon stood silently. The goddess of life remarked that she hadn't expected him to wipe out the entire city so quickly. Yorukan continued drooling, insisting it was insufficient and demanding more food. The goddess replied that she did not know where his next meal would be. Her lips curved into a subtle smile. She mentioned there was another promising direction, promising him a satisfying feast there, in a forest at 7:34 p.m. Arang trembled with fury, recalling her warning that she would kill him if he arrived late. She was certain she had told that jerk clearly. Glancing sideways, she thought that idiot was taking far too long, until she sensed Yorukan looming directly behind her. Girl was merely a level 24 fighter, whereas Eurus's severed head had reached level 999. The bustling player city, Hawkeye walked around complaining. He once stood as the highest authority of the 5-guild alliance, and ranked among the elite players of Chrono Life. With unmatched presence and charisma, he dominated interviews, YouTube, and newspapers, becoming an unrivaled icon within the game. However, after the catastrophe known as Judgment Day, the World Union Guild collapsed. Hawkeye, its former supreme commander, took all responsibility and fell from glory, kept reminding himself of who he was and the title he once carried. The World Guild had once bowed to him, and he wondered if anyone truly believed he would fade away so easily. Suddenly, a violent explosion shook the surroundings. People screamed that a monster had appeared in the central plaza, even though the village was designated a safe zone. On that day, Hawkeye witnessed something beyond belief. Players were erased from existence before his eyes. He concealed himself while observing the chaos, thinking this had gone far beyond acceptable limits. The goddess of life noticed his presence, yet she merely kept smiling calmly. The devastation continued until the 2 figures suddenly lifted into the sky and flew far away. Hawkeye observed everything with his system interface still open, his mind drifting toward the notice board. Then he began laughing, a sound tinged with madness. A monster standing before Sarang made her flinch. She thought to herself that this didn't look like a player. Was there even such a creature on the beginner's hill? The goddess appeared and greeted her warmly, saying it was nice to meet Captain Love. Sarang frowned and asked if she knew Underpants, since he was the only one who used that nickname. Irritated, she added that she had almost attacked him, and questioned why someone would choose such a frightening character skin. Luna asked casually whether she was close to him. Sarang replied that for now they were just playing around, even though she claimed not to like him much because he kept following her. Goddess of Life's expression darkened briefly, but she quickly forced a gentle smile. Earlier, during the confrontation with the Holocene Guild, Luna had already been irritated by Jiwoo speaking to Captain Love. The goddess muttered that she was truly irritating. Sarang, confused, asked what she meant, but before she could react, spikes suddenly pierced her body. Yorukan's strike lifted her into the air, as her HP instantly dropped to 0. Luna coldly declared that she should go to hell, and that she had been overrated. Sarang collapsed, leaving only her scarf behind. Yorukan absorbed her levels and stats, licking his lips and calling it delicious. Luna commented that it had been a satisfying meal, noting she had once been part of a god. Yorukan seemed puzzled, but the goddess simply approached the fallen scarf. She brushed off the matter, saying it was unimportant, and stepped firmly on the scarf. He asked whether they should search for more appetizing prey. At that moment, Jiwoo interrupted, demanding to know where the lunatics thought they were going. Both turned to face him and saw the fury in his eyes. Goddess smiled brightly and greeted him warmly, but Jiwoo told her sharply to be quiet. He warned her to remove her filthy foot from the scarf, unless she wished to lose her life again. The goddess glanced down at the scarf beneath her shoe. She stepped back, apologizing and claiming it was accident. Jiwoo stared at her with icy intensity. Then he turned to Yorukan, mockingly calling him tentacle human and promising to start with him. Jiwoo lifted his staff high above his head. An overwhelming surge of power erupted unlike anything seen before. The dragon's eyes widened briefly, before everything in the attack's path was obliterated. The beam tore through the atmosphere and shot across the galaxy. When the smoke cleared, Jiwoo remained upright, declared he would spare that woman once, and told the cockroach to run while he could. Luna scoffed, asking how a cockroach could compare to her beauty, and telling him to stop acting tough, since he lacked the ability to kill her anyway. She advised him to handle the enemy in front of him before worrying about her. Jiwoo glanced toward the attack's direction and saw Yorukan charging at him. Luna affectionately called the dragon her son, as Yorukan prepared his claws and unleashed another devastating strike. The impact triggered a massive explosion. Eurus cried out in despair for his Haiyan Nim. Jiwoo stood unharmed, remarking that it was surprising. He asked what Yorukan truly was, and why the attack had not affected him. Eurus nervously asked if he was all right, and Jiwoo calmly confirmed. as his injuries healed instantly. Uraken sneered, saying there was no reason for shock since he could dodge such weak attacks. He claimed the strike had never touched him. Jiwoo fixed him with a frigid glare. "Oh, you dodged it. Then I'll just swing harder next time." Eurus muttered that it was a bold bluff, questioning whether the earlier blast had not been full strength. Jiwoo confirmed calmly that those had only been ordinary hits. As he spoke, he unleashed a far greater surge of power, leaving Uraken visibly shaken. Energy burst outward from Jiwoo's chest, triggering the novice ability Swordsman Spirit Master. Until then, he had been limited to a single skill. Taunted Uraken, calling him a cockroach's offspring, warning that for the first time he would use a real skill, and if it struck, the damage would be severe. Jiwoo tightened his grip on the stick, commanding the system to activate continuous cut. The unleashed strike shot beyond the planet, racing toward Saturn, while memories of Sarang filled his mind. Those thoughts overwhelmed him, and his anger intensified over everything that had occurred. The attack seemed to erase Uraken entirely, before continuing onward and piercing Saturn. The planet initially tried to disperse the shockwave, soon began glowing brilliantly, and detonated, unleashing destruction on a planetary scale. That was continuous cut, the simplest technique of a swordsman. Meanwhile, in another location, a live stream was about to start. Hawkeye appeared before the camera, introducing himself once more as the Supreme Commander of the World Union. Chat immediately mocked him and told him to end the stream, yet viewer numbers paradoxically surged as more joined to insult him. Streamer mode in Chrono Life allows players to broadcast their gameplay to an audience. Although normally available to everyone, it had been disabled during Doomsday to guarantee mission success. As a result, the public still had no idea who the individual they were pursuing actually was. Hawkeye declares that he won't beat around the bush and will speak plainly. One individual standing against 3 million gamers. Logically, that sounds utterly impossible. He says he read the company's announcement denying any glitch or hacking, yet he refuses to accept that explanation. He slams the developers for treating players like livestock and demands a proper investigation into the matter. The complaint forum was in chaos, filled with posts about a creature capable of erasing characters. He urges anyone who lost their avatars to join his stream, because he intends to hunt that monster down. He vows to uncover the full truth today and lay bare the corruption of that disgraceful company. Out of nowhere, he pauses and shifts gears, reminding viewers to subscribe and turn on notifications. At the battlefield, the haze gradually starts to disperse. Jiwoo is still on his feet without a single scratch, and he exhales in relief, remarking in astonishment that Uraken's survival was nothing short of astounding. Jiwoo is stunned that he escaped a deadly strike and questions how he managed it. Even though it lived, the creature's body was left in ruins. The entity introduces itself formally as Uraken, whose mission is the complete destruction of mankind. He declares that he is the ultimate boss, the missing head of Eurus. Eurus affirms he sensed it earlier, realizing the familiar aura was real. He warns Hyung-Nim to stay vigilant, suspecting that scoundrel caused the monsters in the Valley of Ghosts to vanish. He concludes that Captain Love's earlier demise was likely his handiwork as well. While Jiwoo absorbs this revelation, Uraken observes their exchange from afar, reiterating his vow to claim Jiwoo's life, then lunges again, slashing with his claws. Jiwoo asks if he truly means it, recalling that Love's avatar had been wiped out entirely. That very second, Uraken strikes. The hero intercepts the attack by pressing his staff against the monster's head, triggering his non-lethal technique. A tremendous blast reverberates across the battlefield. Hawkeye dashes toward the clash, yelling for everyone to remain cautious as he approaches. Jiwoo twirls his staff and advances confidently. He slams it into Uraken's midsection, again activating the non-lethal skill, setting off yet another enormous detonation. Uraken coughs up blood, groaning in agony, yet he stubbornly pushes forward once more. Jiwoo calmly readies his next move, this time unleashing the burst variation of his attack. Waves of energy crash into the monster repeatedly as Jiwoo keeps striking without pause. One last colossal explosion erupts, and Uraken spits out another mouthful of blood. From beneath a tree, Hawkeye observes the entire scene. Surrounding players speculate about who could be battling at such a level, with some thinking the figure looks familiar. Hawkeye remains frozen in disbelief as the smoke dissipates. Jiwoo's face becomes visible. He was the man featured on the poster. The crowd is left speechless. That was the one responsible for Doomsday. Hawkeye recalls the crushing defeat he suffered, the chain of events that followed, blaming that bastard for everything. He is stunned to encounter his greatest foe here and now. Without a moment's delay, he draws his bow and takes aim at Jiwoo. The arrow shoots into the fray, but instead of striking its intended mark, it snaps off a fragment of Uraken's horn. Spectators question what just happened. Suddenly, a message appears in chat saying someone has regained their character. Shortly after, more players confirm the same recovery. Hawkeye refuses to accept it, convinced such a thing cannot occur. Stolen souls were indeed flowing back to their rightful owners. Their levels and abilities had been diminished. With injuries covering him, Uraken's level crashes down to 723. Jiwoo is puzzled. He had been evading effortlessly before, but now the creature's movements are noticeably sluggish. Eurus clarifies that the power the scoundrel absorbed is returning to those it belonged to. At the corporate headquarters, meanwhile, inside the building, a team leader explains that player data wasn't erased but relocated into Uraken's horns, leaving Diarok Bai astonished that he, a developer, was unaware. The staff member responds that he leads the design department. Back on the battlefield, Jiwoo's lips curl into a grin. It be true. If I thrash this bastard enough, will Captain Amber come back as well? Hearing that name seems to unsettle Uraken. He clenches his teeth furiously and rushes ahead, yelling that Jiwoo is merely trivial prey. Jiwoo counters with relentless strikes, again using the non-lethal form of his skill. Each hit connects solidly, inflicting heavy damage on the creature. The system alerts that yet another stolen soul has been restored, causing Uraken's level to drop once again. It had now fallen to level 389. Viewership on Hawkeye's stream continues to surge rapidly. Chat users remark that he was once branded a player killer who triggered Doomsday, yet now their characters are being restored because of him. Hawkeye, who had been staring in shock, finally shuts his mouth and lowers his bow, abandoning any thought of attacking. Sarang's penthouse suite. She follows the livestream on her phone, already dressed in her stage costume. The audience floods the chat with cheers for Jiwoo. Sarang watches wide-eyed, her jaw slack, recalling the days when Jiwoo used to chase after her, begging her to carry him in the game. She contemplates just how drastically he has transformed. Back inside the game, the lingering smoke begins to thin. Uraken drops to his knees, his form utterly battered by the non-lethal assaults. His attributes have fallen to match those of a level 180 player. Jiwoo quickly moves in to close the gap. Eurus notes that all the stolen energy has drained away, forcing him back into his original state. I can see Jiwoo responding, clearly unsure about how to wrap things up. Uraken merely slobbers, completely paralyzed, attempts to mutter his own name incoherently. Without warning, he fires one last spike that pierces straight through the hero. It lands perfectly. The entire audience watching the broadcast is left stunned. Eurus stands there with his mouth hanging open, as Uraken throws his head back and roars in victory. Uraken howls that he was born to wipe out mankind, while Jiwoo's levels are drained away like blood by a parasite. In panic, Eurus tries desperately to call out to his young nymph, crying out as the protagonist's body is ripped apart. Uraken keeps siphoning off his opponent's level. What remained of Jiwoo drops lifelessly to the floor like a snapped branch. The beast horn slowly regenerates. He bursts into manic laughter, yelling that it tasted incredible and that he had never enjoyed such a feast before. His level climbs to 999, yet Uraken proclaims it still falls short. His appetite is endless, for he is Uraken the gluttonous. Eurus walks toward the remnants of his companion, dropping to his knees beside him. He sobs and calls out for his high young nymph. Out of nowhere, the hidden ability healing factor activates, and the ruined flesh starts restoring itself. Uraken feels his stomach swell violently and begins writhing in pain. Cracks spread across his bloated abdomen. A face pushes outward from within the monster's belly. It turns and fixes him with a frigid stare. A grin on that face fills Uraken with pure dread. The monster lets out a tortured scream, while the protagonist only chuckles at the absurd scene. A fragment of Dayak's cigar slips and hits the ground. The viewers question what that revolting sight could possibly be. From high above, Luna observes it all in utter amazement. Jiwoo keeps laughing eerily, remarking how amusing this is and comparing Uraken to a squirming worm. Eurus hesitantly asks if it is truly him, and the protagonist confirms it is. Uraken clenches his teeth, seething with fury, shouting that Jiwoo was born solely to bring about humanity's destruction, and proudly repeating the title Uraken the Gluttonous. His furious cries abruptly cease. Jiwoo starts drawing in his swollen stomach, using that substance to reconstruct his own body. His figure reshapes and reforms, leaving Eurus stunned. Uraken can do nothing but groan as he is steadily consumed. Jiwoo lands firmly on the ground, fully restored. The upgraded healing factor recovery instantly repairs every injury he sustained. Once the healing factor triggers, all cells taken in return to their rightful owner. Jiwoo questions the usefulness of that, since most of his cells had already merged with Uraken, turning him into a component of the monster's body and reducing him to little more than an orc. However, the effect reverses. Uraken himself becomes subject to the healing factor's absorption. Jiwoo casually spits him out with a loud burp. Consequently, a concealed skill is obtained, gluttony, which grants the ability to devour a foe and claim their level and attributes. Luna inquires whether everything has finally ended. She admits it did not unfold as she predicted, yet she found it quite entertaining. Jiwoo remarks that she appears cheerful even though he killed her son. The young woman clarifies that he was wicked and that it was symbolic since she never truly bore him. She adds that she is 21 years old, exactly his age. Startled, Jiwoo asks how she could possibly know that. Disregarding his question, Luna summons her scepter and shifts it aside. After flashing Jiwoo one final smile, she opens a rift in space, casually saying who can say. Massive claws thrust out from within the portal, exposing the limb of a monstrous being beyond reason. Jiwoo freezes in disbelief. Luna steps gracefully onto the enormous hand and bids him farewell, saying she will see him again and calling out to him one last time. Mr. Loser, meanwhile, at the company, Deok's cigar drops from his lips. He instructs his staff to manage the issue by announcing a reward event and to keep observing the matter he previously assigned. Commenting on how amusing Uraken's situation was, he issues another order. From this point forward, they are to monitor only two individuals, one being the former Huraken, and the other Luna, who has returned to the original beginner village. Players lift their arms high into the praising Jiwoo's actions enthusiastically and proclaiming him their champion. A few even blow trumpets, urging all inhabitants of the starting villages to celebrate their game's savior. Jiwoo dramatically presses a hand to his forehead. He wonders who exposed his secret and revealed his strength, destroying any hope of concealing his power. Hawkeye's live stream reaches 235,000 viewers, and footage of the incident spreads rapidly across communities such as YouTube. Amid the applause, an elf yells for silence, insisting that Scoundrel could never be called a hero, claims Jiwoo slaughtered 3 million players in a brief span, and that glorifying the most wanted criminal is madness. Hawkeye cuts him off, arguing that killing players is no different from deleting characters, and telling him to quit spouting nonsense. The single stream, Hawkeye rises to fame and ultimately profits the most from the entire affair. Someone proposes that since he operates solo without a guild, he ought to join the Justice Guild. Others also urge the hero to enter their guilds, promising generous treatment if he accepts. Jiwoo feels overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight and escapes from the crowd that keeps pressuring him to enlist. Eurus jokes that Hyun Nim has become a celebrity and should have revealed his strength sooner, and Jiwoo irritably tells him to be quiet. All at once, he smacks his head against a golden statue. He stumbles back, demanding to know what the hell it is, only to find himself staring at a life-size statue of himself. Both Eurus and Jiwoo look horrified. He begs that it not be him, but Eurus confirms it is indeed Hyungnam. Wang appears behind him and asks whether he likes the sculpture. He steps forward with his guild members, all dressed in nothing but underwear and cloaks. The man declares it was worth spending a massive sum to create this monument. He says he thoroughly enjoyed Jiwoo's display, and as expected, he truly is that person. Wang then asks if he was not the one behind the doomsday, explaining that he was so impressed afterward that he commissioned the statue. Jiwoo denies it, baffled by his enthusiasm. Besides, he questions why they are all half naked. Chairman explains they poured all their funds into the statue, and that it cost more than 20 billion. At that moment, townspeople shout that they have located the hero. Jiwoo bolts again and tells the old man not to chase him. Meanwhile, at Han Sarang's penthouse, she sits quietly on her bed, with her head lowered, contemplating all that has transpired. By now, everything should have been clear to her. The creatures vanished the instant she opened her eyes. That bear rabbit had been flattened with a single strike. Even the gauntlets taken by the Hallison Guild. He must have retrieved them after tracking the guild down and returned them to her. She kept asking herself why he had done it. Why act powerless? Why trick her at all? Chill ran through her as she recalled her stuffed bear lying ruined on the floor. Back then, she had been nothing more than a little girl before her father, weeping in terror and frightened of everything around her. She broke down completely, remembering how he had fooled her while she tried to remove her glasses. In the end, she placed them back over her eyes and sat on the bed shaking uncontrollably. Later on, inside Game City, Jiwoo looked utterly exhausted. He remarked that the crowd had finally settled and joked that this must be what celebrity life feels like. Though Eurus warned him people were still watching, Jiwoo felt uneasy as if something had slipped his mind. He sensed he had forgotten something significant, yet no matter how hard he tried, he could not recall it. Han Sarang appeared right in front of him. Jiwoo called out asking if she had finally shown up. He said it made sense he felt something missing since she had not been there. Bystanders wondered who the girl was that their hero greeted, since none of them had seen her before. Still, there was something oddly familiar about her. Jiwoo remembered the scarf and said he had bought it for her, gently wrapped it around her neck as he spoke. He started to say he obtained it after defeating Huraken, but quickly corrected himself, claiming he simply found it lying on the ground. That explanation only made Han Sarang more annoyed. Body shook with fury. "Stop joking," she snapped. "That is not true. Why are you lying to me?" "What are you talking about?" Jiwoo replied. "I am not good at lying." And Sarang trembled again, this time out of nervous anger as she clenched her teeth. Underpants, she blurted. "Weren't you the one who brought rice cakes to my house?" Jiwoo stared blankly, unsure what she meant. Then realization dawned on him. He recalled delivering those rice cakes to her home. Shock flooded his face. "No way," he whispered, stunned. "Han Sarang be that girl. She confirmed it herself, as viewers looked on at the unfolding scene. Is who I am in reality. Outside the game, Hansarang was known simply as a girl who loved singing. Are you insane? Her Nuna scolded. You cannot reveal your identity before all these people. Have you lost your mind? She was already trending #1 online, and reporters were scrambling to interview her. First, she had designed her avatar to mirror her real appearance. She should have considered that before logging in. Customization allows players to alter looks, but in virtual reality, the law requires them to use their real faces when connecting. Nuna shouted that she could have at least changed her hairstyle, and that it was amazing her identity stayed hidden this long. So what if it is out? Hansarang shot back. I was not even trying to conceal it. Is playing a game a crime? Why must I hide who I am? I play for enjoyment and should not worry about others judging me. I am scared your true self will be exposed. Have you forgotten you have been acting for the entire country? Nuna said. Those words only fueled Hansarang's anger. I never wanted to fake anything, she cried. You forced me. From the start I said I hated lying to my fans. She then slammed her bedroom door shut. Nuna muttered that the girl was impossibly stubborn. Hansarang grabbed her VR headset and quickly put it on as the system powered up and scanned her eyes. The shaking girl gradually regained composure as the system announced authentication complete and began connecting to Crone. Years earlier on a school playground, Hansarang softly sang a rhyme about drinking from a mountain spring. At daybreak, a rabbit rubbed its sleepy eyes, and instead of washing its face, simply drank water. She realized her musical gift when she was still very young. Astonishingly, she debuted at just 5 years old. People called her a genius, a prodigy, even heaven sent. Her debut outshone everyone else's. Misfortune struck as though it had been waiting. The blossom meant to flourish was crushed beneath greedy corporate hands, and those who should have shielded her most were her own parents. Naturally, the motive was money. Sadly familiar story within the entertainment world. A heartbreaking tale that shattered a child's life like a cheap melodrama. Hansarang was pushed into relentless work without mercy. Music shows, interviews, variety programs, and endless commercials filled her schedule. The only reason she endured a timetable no adult could handle was ironically her parents' pressure. They constantly asked what was wrong and insisted she could do better. Even as she cried and trembled in fear, she forced a strained smile onto her face. Eventually, her fragile body reached its breaking point. During a year-end special with record-breaking ratings, she prepared for the grand finale. Under crushing stress at the very end, she suddenly collapsed and vomited on stage. As the audience looked on in horror, the child began coughing violently, crying out for her parents in terror. They offered no comfort and instead covered their faces in anger. Seeing that reaction only deepened her panic despite her illness. From that moment, she carried a wound that would never fade. Sitting alone in a lush green field, Hansarang pondered her past while staring at the scenery. She recalled Jiwoo placing the scarf around her neck and gripped it tightly without thinking. Soon Jiwoo arrived saying he had finally found her. She turned abruptly in surprise. He said his instincts guided him and asked why she ran away. Admitting he had been concerned, Hansarang coldly told him to leave. Jiwoo stood there bewildered by her response. He asked what was wrong and Eurus whispered she was angry. Hyung Nim did not grasp she was upset because he hid his strength, so he asked what to do. Eurus suggested he apologize, since deceiving her had been wrong. Jiwoo coughed softly, called her name, and offered an apology. He said he never intended to trick her, and had planned to reveal everything someday, but never found the right timing. Hansarang tightened her hold on the scarf, rose to her feet, and asked if he truly believed a mere sorry could fix it all, especially when he had lied so effortlessly. Jiwoo demands to know what she is implying. His bewilderment instantly shifts into fear. The griffin dives from above and snatches her away. The girl's life was clearly at risk. Jiwoo shouts her name in sheer panic, watching helplessly as the beast soars upward. The rider atop the griffin casually asks if he handled her too roughly, adding that he hoped she had not fainted. Eurus is left completely dumbfounded, as he instantly recognizes the individual. Jiwoo roars, demanding to know who that bastard is, and ordering him to return. The man mockingly apologizes to Mr. Hero, explaining that certain parties wish to see Miss Hansarang, so he will be borrowing her briefly. Cursing furiously, Jiwoo raises his staff. Eurus yells for his Hyung Nim to stay calm, warning that the man's strength is on another level. Jiwoo pays no attention. He swings his weapon upward with force, sending a massive surge of energy racing toward the griffin rider. Kidnapper merely exhales and activates a skill called 8 Sights and 8 Mirrors. With the 5th sight, Reflection, he redirects Jiwoo's own attack back at him. Jiwoo remains mid-strike when his blast barrels straight toward him. Shock freezes him in place. The explosion crashes into him head-on, the shockwave tearing apart the terrain, force even reaching beyond the sky itself. Everything to Jiwoo's right vanishes, including his arm. Eurus screams for his young Nim, frantically asking if he is okay. The protagonist has suffered a devastating wound. His healing factor triggers without delay. A fresh arm regenerates where the old one was lost. Jiwoo lifts his gaze, fury blazing in his eyes. Eurus questions whether he now understands this foe is far from ordinary. The man is named Habiak, a being that exists on the same level as Eurus. Jiwoo wonders aloud if that does not make him weak as well. Suddenly Habiak's mirror fractures. The sight leaves him astonished. Soon he smiles, praising Jiwoo as remarkable, the first to shatter his defense since that individual. He insists that a mere mortal has no right to wield a fragment of divinity. Within a concealed tower in the western woods, Hansarang awakens and hurriedly retreats backward. She demands to know what is happening, who he is, where she is, and why she was brought there. Habiak tells her to relax, assuring her he intends no harm and that some people simply wish to meet Miss Hansarang. She asks who could possibly want that. At that moment, two figures step forward. Hansarang recoils in shock, fear flashing across her face. She immediately recognizes them. They are her parents, and memories of that stage incident and their averted faces flood back. After that cursed day, she chose to retire from singing, but someone refused to let her quit. Her mother struck her across the cheek. Those parents rejected her retirement and forced her back under the spotlight. Her mother would insist it was all done out of love. For years, she was denied the freedom to step away, when their source of income disappeared entirely. During the traumatic incident involving her father, they had already gone beyond every moral boundary. Such people did not deserve the title of parents, even attempted to sell their only daughter. It was sheer luck that Hansarang escaped. Only by running did she survive. The only refuge she reached was a police station. In that way, she was finally freed from her living nightmare. Court granted a restraining order against them. They tried to contest it, but failed miserably. Under legal protection, she was at last safe from them. Still, the ordeal had already shattered her mentally. She developed a severe trauma connected to deception. From then on, she shut herself in her room and escaped reality through online games. Living in darkness worsened her eyesight quickly, forcing her to wear glasses. Even now, removing them in real life triggers anxiety from those memories. The story of how she stepped outside again will come later. Returning to the present, Hansarang stands before her parents. Her body quivers with overwhelming fear. She asks about the restraining order. They explain they joined the game after reading she played Chrono Live. Finding her alone would have been hard, but luckily someone assisted them. Habiak bids them farewell and says he will leave so they may speak privately. He vanishes instantly from sight. Her mother comments that she has grown so much, and that although they saw her on television, it is wonderful to see her even virtually. She complains that the law cruelly separated parents from their child. Hansarang begins to break down, teeth grinding in anguish. She asks what they want and says she will log out if they have nothing important. Mother suddenly cries out that they are deeply sorry. She claims they have long wished to apologize and admit they were too harsh that day. He asks if Sarang might forgive them so they can live happily together again like before. Meanwhile, Habiak strolls outside the tower. His griffin abruptly rises to attention. Jiwoo stands directly behind him. Habiak remarks that the location was secret, but assumes Eurus must have guided him. He begins to speak further, but Jiwoo cuts him off. Jiwoo declares he will fight once more, and that victory alone will not satisfy him until he has his revenge. Habiak sighs, snaps his fingers, and says it cannot be helped. The griffin lets out a fierce roar, then charges toward them. Jiwoo wonders if the bird will be his first target. He blinks in disbelief, because there is no longer just one, but two griffins, and he rubs his eyes stunned as more seem to multiply. Questions whether this is some absurd duplication trick. Habiak activates his fourth sight known as photocopy. Tens of thousands of griffins rush toward Jiwoo, leaving him wondering what madness this is. He swings his staff and unleashes an explosion that destroys everything ahead. Yet the shattered fragments remain frozen in midair. And even more griffins start pouring out from the rift. Jiwoo asks who that man really is, and Eurus explains it is photocopy, the fourth power of Habiak's mirror. He warns Hyung-nim to stay alert because the mirror's full technique is called 8 visions, and Jiwoo admits he has never heard of it. Eurus clarifies that there are 8 mirrors, each vision from 1st to 8th possessing a unique ability. For instance, the earlier skill reflection can bounce back every physical or magical strike. Jiwoo grumbles that it sounds ridiculously overpowered, and the game needs balancing, making Eurus stare at him as if that comment is absurd. Reality, balance was never the company's goal, since Habiak is not a player but a boss meant to be defeated. Meanwhile, Habiak simply watches him without speaking. Jiwoo mocks the game design, saying it is hilarious that a boss roams around acting human and wonders what creature invented such nonsense. Sarcasm is cut short when a griffin lunges at him from behind. Taken off guard, Jiwoo coughs up blood. Instantly, the remaining griffins hurl blazing fireballs, firing them all straight at him. Even under that fierce assault, Jiwoo stays on his feet, muttering that they only startled him briefly. He rises gripping his staff and activates continuous cut. Griffins before him dissolve into nothing. Habiak merely lets out another tired sigh. He remarks that no matter how many Jiwoo destroys it is pointless, as photocopy can recreate them endlessly. To demonstrate, fresh griffins materialize where the old ones vanish. Snarling menacingly at the hero, Jiwoo asks if he is serious, and realizes he must break the mirror itself to win. Habyak answers only with a wicked grin. Jiwoo unleashes continuous cut again, wiping out every beast in sight. At the moment they regenerate, he fires off another relentless wave of slashes. After repeating this cycle over a dozen times, the planet trembles and radiant beams shoot outward with each strike. At last, faint cracks spread across the mirror. Habyak is visibly astonished, wondering who this opponent truly is. Jiwoo points his staff directly at him, asking if it is finally starting to break. He taunts that if Habyak is like Eurus, then he must be weak. Habyak responds that he is not weak at all, but that Jiwoo is abnormal and far stronger than expected. Jiwoo tells him to erase that grin, because it reminds him of a cockroach. He then demands answers about kidnapping Captain Ammer and the meaning of a god's fragment, warning him not to test his patience. Habyak hesitates, saying he is unsure whether to reply. Jiwoo threatens that he might lose his life if he refuses, and orders him not to move. Habyak notes the mirror is nearly shattered, but believes he can activate it once more. Suddenly, something advances from behind them. Jiwoo wonders if another griffin head is coming. Instead, he is shocked by what he sees. An exact replica of himself stands there. Even his staff is perfectly duplicated, down to the smallest detail of his clothing. Jiwoo stares in disbelief, questioning whether he must fight himself. The duplicate mirrors him precisely like a reflection, raises the staff, and performs a reversed continuous cut. A storm of slashes rushes toward Jiwoo, only wears a resigned expression, allowing the attack to strike him. His health bar begins falling rapidly, until it drops to 0. That instant the surroundings erupt violently. Habyak observes from afar, remarking how impressive it is, and thinking he should have copied Jiwoo from the start instead of the griffin. Eurus shouts at Habyak, demanding to know his objective. Habyak greets the dragon casually, saying it has been a long time and apologizing for being preoccupied. He comments that Eurus looks even cuter than before. Eurus snaps at him to quit joking and asks what he wants while standing before Hyung Nim. He demands to know whether that individual sent him. Habyak calls Eurus by name and teasingly asks to pinch his cheeks once, prompting the dragon to curse at him. All of a sudden, something begins sprouting from the ground. Bits of flesh wriggle violently, forming into a grotesque shape. Habyak asks what on earth that is. Eurus wonders if everything is about to repeat itself. The healing factor activates once more. Jiwoo's vitality is completely restored. He steps forward fully healed, though his body twitches eerily like something from a horror film. The new figure suddenly calls out to Habyak, shocking him as Jiwoo's duplicate appears behind. Jiwoo turns and mutters, "There you are, you fake." The copy remains silent, staring coldly. Eurus remarks that the clone seems faker than the original, earning a sharp order from Jiwoo to be quiet. Duplicate grips its staff firmly and swings downward at the real Jiwoo. The energy wave races forward at tremendous speed. Jiwoo sighs at the sight, reverting to his proper stance, raising his own staff and striking upward to counter. Forces smash together violently. Spectators of the battle are left speechless. It feels like two opposing energies are colliding upon the world itself. As the dust slowly settles, two Jiwoos rush at one another, teeth clenched and shouting simultaneously. Their staffs blur as their powers clash at incredible speed. Shockwaves ripple outward from every collision. The real Jiwoo pours all his strength into each strike, while the duplicate matches him perfectly. Both activate their techniques at the same time, releasing continuous cut yet again. The detonations ravage the western forest, as blue and red auras crash and intertwine. Jiwoo exerts overwhelming force, experiencing that familiar sensation once again. The duplicate releases his maximum strength as well. The last strike, the protagonist roars in fury. Their blows meet and detonate, tearing the surroundings apart yet again. Both the real Jiwoo and his double are startled by what happens, as the blast from their power rips a massive chunk from the earth. Habyak and Eurus shield their faces from the shockwave. The water god remarks that since they smashed each other's heads, they might have destroyed themselves. Eurus ignores that and shouts desperately for his Hyung Nim. The smoke slowly begins to thin, revealing the original and the copy wriggling on the ground like formless lumps, both relying on their healing factor to regain human shape. Habyak notes that they are not mad, yet this seems to be their only way to recover. Soon they fully return to normal and rush at one another again, their forces clashing violently. Red and blue explosion swallows the mountain, while the onlookers observe from afar. Eurus says it is time Habyak explained why he was obstructing Hyung Nim and abducted Captain Love. Habyak keeps that faint smile on his lips. He replies that as expected Eurus understands nothing and tells him to watch carefully. He adds that even that person cannot act recklessly before him, the strongest being in chrono light. Speaking of the proud Eurus, Habyak then asks why Eurus, who once cared for nothing in the world, is now following a mere human. Why Eurus repeats, wondering if Habyek still fails to see. His opponent says Eurus has misunderstood much, and can relax since he has no interest in Mr. Hero. His sole aim is the fragment of God. Eurus asks if he means Captain Love. Habyek laughs, saying a human would never hold such worth. Han Sarang is only the bearer of the fragment of God. Meanwhile, inside the concealed tower, Han Sarang's mother apologizes repeatedly, begging her daughter to accept it. Then she notices the girl's hands are empty. She pauses briefly, before suddenly grabbing her daughter's wrist. My precious Han Sarang, where are the gauntlets of silence? Back on the mountain, Eurus asks if those are the fragment of God that cost only 10 million. Habyek replies that price means nothing, and soon the item will be obtainable by ordinary players. In Chrono Life, equipment is divided into multiple tiers, the lowest being the common rank. Next comes the rare tier, followed by unique rank, and finally, the Newman rank. And Eurus has heard rumors of a transcendent tier, though he has never seen one. He recalls that every transcendent item rests with Jiwoo. Habyek explains that regardless of rank or power, the fragment of God is extraordinary, aside from the transcendent tier, especially among the world's gods. Elsewhere, Luna observes the battle from a distance. He comments that Mr. Habyek has revealed far too much, saying a man who cannot keep secrets is unattractive, asking if that is not so. Beside her, a god calmly eats a sandwich and says this was already known. After all, Luna herself has been gathering fragments of God since the night she entered the Hallasan Guild, referring to the gauntlets of silence. Luna admits he had been aware all along. God asks whether she believed Huracan could absorb the fragment. The goddess of life nods, saying she acted composed though the outcome differed from her expectations. Suddenly, an even greater explosion erupts as Jiwoo and his duplicate's powers crash together. Jiwoo starts to feel exhaustion creeping in, but his copy shows no such weakness. The clone seizes the moment and strikes precisely. Jiwoo senses the danger instantly, yet a slash cuts across his chest, sending him flying backward. Eurus cries out for his Hyung Nim. Habyek explains that their stats and control are equal, yet there is one fatal distinction: the gap between a player and a bot. Unlike Jiwoo, the copy does not err from fatigue, so the battle's flow will likely shift. Eurus rushes toward his Hyung Nim. Habyek simply sighs at the scene. Jiwoo's body melts into slime upon the ground, then reforms with the chest wound still visible. Eurus quickly reaches him. Jiwoo activates his healing factor once more. His body steadily repairs itself, even wiping away the blood from his lips. He yells that this is insanely fun. Both Eurus and Habyek are taken aback by that reaction. Jiwoo says he has been bored since he could defeat everyone in one hit, and does not want to kill the fake yet, but continue playing. Eurus questions his words, given how dangerous the situation is. Clone charges again, while Jiwoo laughs at the idea of danger. He remains still before the incoming strike, stating there are two ways to end this imposter. From Eurus to the watching gods, all are stunned by that claim. Their staffs crash together, triggering another massive explosion and cloud of smoke that obliterates yet another stretch of land. Eurus attempts to shield his eyes, while Luna and the god endure the blast without flinching. Smoke suddenly clears. Habyek remarks that Jiwoo mentioned two methods and wonders which he will choose. Luna takes another bite of her sandwich, saying he is probably bluffing. Compared to other bosses in Chrono Life, Habyek stands far above, and his 8 Visions ability is absurdly broken. He is not an enemy meant to be fought alone, and she doubts Jiwoo can win. Jiwoo then declares the first option was to destroy the planet outright. Luna and the god tense up immediately. Jiwoo explains that ending the world like before would reset the game, returning Captain Love to the starting village and erasing the imposter. However, he is not inclined to do that, and prefers attempting something different. Two gods relax slightly, while Deok nervously bites his nails. He silently urges Jiwoo to hurry with the second plan, clearly the most anxious of all. Back in the hidden tower, the mother presses her daughter about the gauntlets of silence, asking her to tell the truth and promising not to be angry. The father cuts in, saying Habyek would pay handsomely for the item, and claims she owes them at least that much for giving her life. And Sarang answers that she truly does not know, as she lost them some time ago. Her father moves in closer to her. He presses her, asking whether she was the one who concealed them, and Sarang firmly denies it, claiming the situation unfolded differently. Instead of listening, he lashes out and slaps her harshly, screams that she is a thankless child, and says they suffered because she ran off. He accuses her of squandering their money and forgetting who provided everything, demanding she reveal where his cash went. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, a glowing magic circle appears beneath Jiwoo. Eurus stares at it in confusion, wondering if the rookie master has unveiled another new technique. Habyek's expression also shows clear astonishment, yet the dragon seems to recognize the violet aura immediately. Jiwoo triggers the power he had taken from Huracan. A writhing tentacle suddenly pushes out from his body. It is gluttony, extending grotesquely from his mouth. Eurus questions whether escaping from that place is even possible. The tentacle drives straight through the clone's back, then begins consuming the clone's form. Habayek asks if this was Jiwoo's scheme, and mocks him for thinking his clones couldn't replicate the gluttony ability. In response, another tentacle bursts out from the clone's mouth, slams into Jiwoo's chest. The two start devouring one another at the same time. Habayek clarifies that the enemy is a perfect mirror, copying every power including gluttony, regeneration, and even the battery. Jiwoo realizes his tactic has backfired, and that he should have gone with his original approach. Nevertheless, Jiwoo commands, "Equip reserve battery," leaving Habayek puzzled by the term. Before he can grasp what it means, a sharp stinger suddenly pierces his chest. Jiwoo reveals that his true second strike was aimed at wounding the real body. The tentacle starts draining Habayek himself, who finally understands that targeting the clone was merely a distraction from the start. His body begins to warp grotesquely. The clone trembles and weakens. Moments later, it vanishes entirely. Jiwoo remarks that he expected this, knowing the clone would disappear once the original suffered a lethal blow. He smirks and says the fight was entertaining, but now it is time to end it. Habayek continues being relentlessly drained. However, he fights back and manages to cut off the tentacle. Jiwoo is taken aback by this resistance. Mirror bleeds in tandem with Habayek. Clutching the artifact, he shouts angrily that he never expected to be cornered and reluctantly declares he must abandon the piece of God, the gauntlets of silence. God reacts in shock, wondering if that power had not already been absorbed by Urakin. He questions whether Habayek even realizes this. Luna denies it, admitting she never informed him. Habayek ascends into the sky and announces a temporary retreat. Jiwoo retracts the tentacle and mocks him, saying only losers give themselves permission to run. Habayek admits it, saying the defeated should indeed flee in shame. With that, he hurls the mirror toward Jiwoo. Jiwoo gains possession of the artifact that carries one of the 8 visions. Jiwoo questions the reason, while Eurus is astonished that Habayek handed it over. Habayek tells him to accept it as a reward for clearing the raid, adding it is not official, but something he would have offered anyway out of gratitude for sparing him. Jiwoo asks why he would act so generously, when killing him would yield even better loot. Habayek concedes the point, but explains that the mirror requires him alive to function, making mercy the wiser choice. He then bids them farewell and departs. Ownership of the mirror transfers to Jiwoo, making him its new master. Jiwoo simply shrugs, thinking it is of little importance. From the beginning, his real target had been Captain Love, not the mirror wielder. Inside the concealed tower, in the same chamber as earlier, Han Sarang's father keeps beating her, yelling that she is ungrateful and oblivious to the hardship she caused. He orders her to obey her parents and calls her defiant, asking if she forgot who gave her life. The girl collapses onto the ground, her head lowered. She remains silent as the old man lets out a weary sigh. Soon after, a grin slowly forms on his face. He says that since it has come to this, they no longer need the gauntlets of silence. Now on, they can simply extract money from him directly. Han Sarang feels she cannot endure any more of this. Her mother steps closer, saying this is just a game and the court's protection order holds no power here, leaving her no way to escape. Sarang clenches her fists tightly. Her mother remarks that their family will stay united forever. In her heart, the girl desperately begs for someone to rescue her from this nightmare. Jiwoo's voice cuts in, calling them fools and pointing out she can simply quit the game. All eyes turn toward him. Mother demands to know who he is and how he dares to interfere. Sarang recognizes him instantly, thinking of the strange underwear guy. The father recognizes him too and shouts that he is the useless man from the video who was touching Sarang. He is struck before finishing his insult. Jiwoo had launched a non-lethal attack using his skill. He remarks that even if he seems rude, he still shows respect to elders. However, he adds that selfish old fools like them are exceptions. Eurus wonders if Jiwoo was not equally blunt with the Halison Guild's adjustice. Recovering, the father shouts that they are Sarang's parents. Jiwoo scoffs, asking what kind of parents beat their child and squeeze money out of her. The mother cuts in, telling him to ask Sarang because they truly are her parents. Jiwoo sighs, saying he hates when people drag real life into a game since it ruins the whole point. The mother retorts that this is why children who play games these days turn out this way. Jiwoo turns toward Captain Love and asks why she is sitting idle after being beaten. He tells her not to restrain herself and to fight seriously, reminding her she is the highest level here. Sarang is startled by what he says. She mutters that they truly are her parents and calls it revolting. Jiwoo comments that being overly realistic in a game is just pitiful. He says one glance at them is enough to understand the kind of household she comes from. He adds that if she plans to act like a loser here too and flee as she does in reality, then there is no reason to play. Sarang clenches her teeth tightly. Through tears she yells that he knows nothing and understands nothing at all. She says she has been enduring everything until now. Her mother suddenly rushes forward to slap her. She shouts that they are the ones who have endured it, and that no matter the setting, they remain her parents. Sarang bites down hard once again. Jiwoo remarks in disbelief that her mother is heartless enough to strike her again, and says goodbye. Captain Love is extremely powerful, and even unarmed her fists pack tremendous force. Motivated, Sarang dashes toward her mother. The woman retreats nervously, gritting her teeth. Painful childhood memories rush back into Sarang's mind. With tears streaming, Sarang lunges forward, her fist tightly clenched. Her punch connects squarely with her mother's face. Force of the blow sends the woman sprawling backward. Sometime afterward, Sarang appears in a televised interview about herself. As a renowned idol and active player, she smiles and admits that yes, she has been deeply enjoying Chrono Life. The host remarks on the game's realism and asks whether she hesitates even when killing something as small as a rabbit. She laughs and says she can smash monsters without issue, calling it the perfect way to relieve stress. The idol has fully moved past her trauma and now lives with ease, free from anxiety and no longer even needing her glasses. The interviewer notes that this seems completely different from her usual demeanor. Sarang echoes the word opposite thoughtfully. He muses that perhaps her in-game persona reflects her true self. The audience reacts shyly, faces reddening at her candid statement. Sarang shrugs and says none of that really matters, questioning the importance of defining her true identity. She adds that searching for reality inside a game defeats the purpose of playing. At home, Jiwoo watches the interview broadcast on television. He lets out a sigh, wondering if her bold honesty is the reason her fanbase has grown so much, and admits he supports her as well. The media frames it flawlessly, portraying Han Sarang as someone who conquered her trauma and left gaming behind for a happy real life. At once inside Chrono Life, the situation tells a different story. Sarang grumbles that the brat is late yet again. She complains about his constant tardiness and jokes about whether he wants to be dragged to hell. Jiwoo argues that he rushed over right after watching the interview and points out she should be at the studio instead. She snaps back that it was pre-recorded, revealing she never truly quit the game after overcoming her fears. In fact, she logs in even more often now and has reportedly cut down on her real-world activities. Sarang urges him to hurry because they are short on time, and a confused Jiwoo asks where they are headed. She scolds him for nitpicking and hints he still has not properly accepted her apology. Jiwoo waves it off and follows after her. A triumphant grin appears on Sarang's face. Tells him she will forgive him this once, since he will be the one carrying her. He looks puzzled and asks what she means. Then memories from the past surface in his mind. He recalls asking her to carry him before. At that time, she had insisted she was just a beginner who knew nothing. Now she turns around, steps closer, and speaks. Please carry me, Master Jiwoo. Chrono Life stands as the top-ranked virtual reality game worldwide. Its massive player base has led to the creation of countless guilds. Among them, the strongest earned a distinct title. They were known as the 5 great guilds of the world. Each one possessed unique strengths and traits that justified its fame. Yet one guild followed an entirely different strategy, boasting an intelligence network superior even to the Global Information Guild. Their long-distance influence extended across the entire continent. Composed solely of rogues, they were called the Robin Hood Guild, counted among the Elite 5. This once admirable organization was wiped out overnight. The guild master gazes silently at the devastation. He turns and leaps upward toward the moonlit sky. He lands gracefully with a nimble flip, using the mountain slope to propel himself into another jump. Out of nowhere, a man appears behind him and mockingly asks if a little rat survived. The guild master senses the danger instantly, retaliates with a sharp slash that appears to cleave the man in half. But the figure dissolves, proving to be nothing more than a mirage. The man's voice echoes that he outclasses the rest, and his presence fades away entirely. The guild master is left bewildered by what just occurred. Strange sensation from the impact unsettles him. Suddenly, he is struck hard from behind. The attacker remarks that even so, he is merely at their level. Blood spurts from the guild master's mouth from the heavy blow. Demands to know who the man is and the motive behind the attack. The assailant responds that the answer should be obvious. Mask forms over his face, revealing he too is a member of the guild. He adds casually that he did it simply because it amused him. On another occasion, near a woodland area, a carriage rolls along the road, drawn by a massive feline. The driver announces they are close to reaching the Rocky Mountain dungeon. Inside, Jiwoo chews on meat and remarks that it is nearer than expected. Sarang replies that the map already showed that and estimates they will arrive within 5 minutes. Transport is a well-known service in Chrono Life, called the Meow Meow carriage. The native Molino cats are domesticated and trained specifically to pull these carts. Interestingly, the service was founded by an ordinary tamer class player whose profits surpassed many real-world small businesses. Sering exclaims that they have arrived and marvels at how enormous the place is. Jiwoo reflects on their target location, the Rocky Mountain Dungeon, towering roughly 1,000 meters above sea level and filled with monsters around the mid-30s in level. It has become a favored hunting spot for beginners. That is what he has heard, since he only ever reached level 7 himself. After all that explanation, the true purpose of their visit is to carry Han Sering. She had been far more serious about it than he initially believed. Somehow, he ended up agreeing to this arrangement. He wonders how far he must level her, considering it might be faster to head straight to Eurus's nest and max her out. His thoughts halt when he notices her hands. Recalling something, he mentions preparing a present, surprising Sering. Jiwoo opens his inventory and summons an item. The transcendental gauntlets reappear before them. He explains he forgot about them before, and since he already owns a pair, he wants her to have these. Han Sering's cheeks flush at his thoughtfulness. Tears suddenly well up in her eyes. She thanks him, saying it has been ages since she received a genuine gift, and when he questions that given her fame, she insists this feels entirely different. Jiwoo laughs softly and agrees with her sentiment. Holding the gauntlets tightly, Sering realizes he has truly changed from before. She expresses her gratitude again and promises to use them well. Then she recalls something and asks for his character name. Jiwoo wonders if he never told her, but she explains she forgot it after briefly seeing it when they formed the party, and he begins to introduce himself. The rumbling of the cart cuts him off mid-sentence. The cat abruptly halts, causing the coachman to question the sudden stop. The jolt sends items in the back tumbling about. The driver assures them they are unharmed and claims the cat was startled without cause. In the rear compartment, Sering ends up sprawled over Jiwoo. Jiwoo asks what just happened and checks if Captain Love is all right. She nods, confirming that she is fine. Then all at once, Jiwoo realized something was off. He had a tight grip on his underwear. Watching from a distance, Eurus grimaced in visible disgust. Cat kept meowing in fear while the driver tried to soothe it and asked what had startled it. Directly before the carriage stood Hong, her body covered in injuries. She apologized for the trouble and asked if they could lend her assistance. All eyes shifted toward her. Jiwoo and the others exchanged confused looks. Hong explained that the culprit was a man she had never encountered before, someone whose level and class were completely unknown. The only detail she had managed to learn was his in-game name. One thing was certain in her mind: he was no ordinary player. He claimed he could duplicate items, having produced a perfect copy of her Ha-Ho mask right in front of her. The name displayed above him was Passive Boy. Sering frowned, saying she had never heard of such a person. For some odd reason, Eurus pictured a carrot instead of the mysterious player. Jiwoo said he had a question, and Hong nodded in approval. He then bluntly asked her identity. Sering cut in, explaining that Hong was the head of the Robin Hood Guild, famous enough for even children to know, and Eurus added that he witnessed her defeat 3 million players. Jiwoo shrugged, saying everyone has issues, and a random lunatic attacking her guild was not enough reason for him to step in. Hong slowly removed her mask and bowed deeply in apology. She admitted she was personally asking for help despite not introducing herself properly, but Jiwoo replied that persistence alone would not change his mind. Hong, who turned out to be strikingly beautiful, introduced herself again with composure. Suddenly, Jiwoo flipped his stance, saying reasons do not matter and that helping those in trouble happens to be his specialty. Sering could only think what a shameless guy he was. Hong thanked him sincerely, promising he would not regret getting involved. She then revealed that the situation was connected to him as well. Jiwoo blinked in surprise at that. At the same time, elsewhere at the Chrono Life headquarters, an employee announced the end of the shift and told the infrastructure support team to head home. One man complained that they were still stuck doing overtime, and the team leader questioned it since no authorization had been given. Seo Sung-won stepped in, telling everyone to clock out while he would handle the extra hours himself. A coworker teased him about not reconciling with his wife yet, and after some laughter they all left. Kyung-won remained alone in the office. A faint smile crept across his face. He muttered that they were a bunch of fools. He grumbled that those idiots only pretended to be clueless and criticized the younger generation. In his view, they exploited every convenience life offered and were doomed to stay broke forever. With that thought, he put on his VR headset. Now that the room was empty, it was time for him to earn real cash. The system authenticated him and connected him to Chrono Life. Private GM channel was recognized. It revealed that he was none other than Passive Boy. Once logged in, he soared across the mountain range. He declared that the moment had finally arrived, and he summoned his Crimson Blade. It was the Executioner's Blade, level 99, a unique weapon of terrifying strength. Seung-won smirked and said it was time for overtime. Every piece of his equipment had reached its maximum level. Master level, the highest tier, was something even pro gamers rarely attain. At that rank, players could acquire transcendental class items. News of this had spread among the community, yet no one had actually witnessed such an item. Sarang stared in disbelief at the legendary transcendental gauntlets before her. She was completely stunned by their presence. She called out to Underpants, saying she first wanted to examine them but now wished to wear them. Shocked, she asked if they were truly transcendental rank, and Jiwoo casually replied she could use them since he owned several. She gulped nervously. After equipping them, the gauntlets bound permanently to her character. A massive explosion erupted around them. The system message declared her the rightful owner of the transcendental gauntlets. Sarang stood there stunned. The gauntlets shone brilliantly for a moment. They shrank and transformed into plain-looking gloves. She asked in confusion why such a mighty weapon now looked so shabby. The explanation appeared, stating they were sealed due to her insufficient qualifications. Cursed internally, realizing transcendental gear was not ideal at her level, and that a unique item might have suited her better. She gently tapped a nearby rock. Stone and the surrounding ground instantly shattered. A tremendous blast rippled through the area. Startled, she insisted she barely touched it, proving the weapon was indeed sealed. Eurus commented that it looked weak and mocked the transcendental rank, barely suppressing his reaction, and Jiwoo agreed. Eurus then asked what their next move was, and whether they would accept Hong's plea. Jiwoo answered that he had to, since the issue involved him directly. Story then flashes back to his earlier talk with Hong. When she first asked for help, he refused, saying he did not even know what passive boy looked like. Hong asked him what he believed the man's true aim was. Jiwoo guessed it was simply for entertainment. Hong insisted that was clearly not the case. He explained his goal was profit, as he duplicated items and sold them. Guild intelligence suggested he was a merchant-type player, and had recently been selling goods from Eurus's nest. Though the price drop was problematic, his actions were technically legal, yet she argued it was still an abuse of power. Jiwoo asked her to clarify, and she continued. She warned that if passive boy was left unchecked, the in-game economy would collapse and chrono life itself would deteriorate. Jiwoo scratched his nose skeptically. He suggested reporting the issue to customer service instead. That would get his account suspended. Hong laughed, calling him more foolish than she expected. Jiwoo bristled and demanded what she meant. She explained that customer service would only send automated replies and solve nothing. Hong stepped onto her carriage and said firmly, "Only you can stop him, since you alone defeated the World Union Guild." She then leaped down from the carriage. She pleaded with him to find and eliminate passive boy before the game suffered further damage. Returning to the present, Jiwoo grumbled that it was troublesome but unavoidable, ignoring it would interfere with his own item sales. Sarang asked if he had any plan, since searching blindly was impossible. Jiwoo replied that if reporting was useless, only one solution remained. They would have to blackmail the executives. Eurus and Sarang stared at him in shock. Back at the Chrono Life headquarters, Jiwoo took out his phone and called the president, ordering him to come to Gukbot and threatening to wreck the server again if he refused. On the other side of the call, Deok can barely sputter out a question about what that brat means. Protagonist ends the call before he can finish, then bursts into loud laughter. Enraged, Deok slams his phone onto the desk and curses the kid under his breath. Jiwoo skips along playfully, mocking that if customer service is useless, he will just visit the president in person. He figures he might as well enjoy himself and orders 2 bowls of gukbap. But as he opens the door, he notices someone waiting outside for him. It turns out to be Han Sarang. Startled, Jiwoo asks if she will be okay since someone might recognize her, and Sarang replies she does not care because it is late and unlikely anyone will notice. She also reminds him that in real life, he should address her by her proper name. He sends a text to her Nuna, saying she is stepping out for a short walk. Meanwhile, the woman, still in the shower, grumbles that the girl did not even warn her in advance. At the Gukbap restaurant, Deok storms in and flings the door open. He shouts for Lee Jiwoo, furious that a mere brat dared summon him without respect. Soon he spots the two calmly eating at a table. He marches over and grabs Jiwoo by the collar, scolding him for ordering around someone older. His gaze then shifts to the girl sitting across from him. He demands to know who she is and whether she is Jiwoo's girlfriend. Before Sarang can respond, Jiwoo interrupts, telling him he must be crazy because that is the nation's top idol, Han Sarang, and warns him that her fans will curse him if he keeps talking nonsense. Irritated by Jiwoo's tone, Deok tightens his grip around his neck. That instant, Sarang slams her palm down on the table. She tells them to cut the pointless arguing and get to the main issue. Jiwoo agrees, and seeing her serious expression, Deok finally releases him. Jiwoo casually orders an extra bowl for the president. Deok looks stunned when he hears the meeting is about item duplication. He scoffs, saying they must think the game is trash, and argues that with government backing, no hacker could pull off something like that. Jiwoo fires back that someone witnessed the duplication firsthand. Deok insists the witness must be mistaken, and the two fall into a heated argument. Sarang steps in, suggesting that if an outside hacker is impossible, perhaps it is someone from within. Deok falls silent briefly. He claims that is impossible too, since even staff with GM privileges cannot duplicate items. He sets his spoon down firmly, announcing he is busy. He tells them to pay the bill and enjoy themselves. Sarang cheerfully bids him goodbye, while Jiwoo thinks the old man probably wants him dead. Outside the restaurant, Deok quickly lights a cigar. He exhales heavily and reflects as smoke drifts upward. He calls team leader Choi, who immediately answers his superior's summons. Deok instructs him to prepare 5 of his most trusted men. Back at the Stone Mountain dungeon, Jiwoo remarks that they are back where they started, and Sarang agrees. Jiwoo grumbles that it is annoying but vows to crush whoever is behind it, passive boy or not. Sarang laughs and teases him for acting so macho, then wonders aloud what passive boy's real objective might be, and Jiwoo asks why she suddenly cares. Sarang explains it makes no sense, because if money were the motive, there must be a reason for targeting the Robin Hood Guild. Jiwoo guesses they might simply own valuable items, but she counters that if duplication is possible, he could profit from anything. She questions why he attacked regular players, especially a guild known for superior intelligence. Jiwoo is impressed by her logic, but admits he still has no clue. Sarang says she expected that, and Jiwoo retorts that she has not grown any smarter either. Suddenly, an explosion erupts nearby, startling them. Sarang asks in shock what just happened. They stare at the massive cloud of smoke rising. Jang remarks that the blast seems on par with Jiwoo's attacks. Jiwoo sprints toward the source. Sarang calls out her friend's name in alarm. At the center of the explosion, Habiek kneels on the ground. He is severely injured and furious. Missing one arm, he hears Seung-won laugh mockingly, saying he is weaker than rumor. The so-called one and only Habiek. The boss demands to know why he is doing this and warns that as this world's coordinator, such actions will not go unnoticed and higher-ups will not tolerate it. Seung-won grabs him by the throat. He sneers that he is just a conceited AI, nothing more than data daring to defy him. Threatens that killing a unique boss means permanent deletion. So if Habiek values existence, he should answer. He demands to know the location of Habiek's master. Habiek laughs at the threat. He asks if Seung-won truly believes he will reveal anything. Seung-won grows furious at his defiance. He raises his sword, telling him to prepare for hell. Suddenly, a voice orders him to stop. Seung-won realizes someone significant has arrived ahead of him. It is Luna, the goddess of life. He tells her to wait her turn, because he will finish this one and deal with her next. Luna responds only with a faint sigh and subtle smile. He remarks that logging into a GM account has turned him into yet another reckless fool. Enraged, Seung-won hurls insults at her. Luna calmly states he is nothing but garbage. Seung-won pauses mid-swing, and he laughs and throws Habiek aside. Wonders why he should waste time when she will be next anyway. He strides toward Luna, demanding again to know where Habiek's master is. He adds that she need not answer immediately since they have plenty of time. He threatens to tear off her limbs, hang her from a tree, cauterize the wounds, and keep healing her so she cannot die. That way they can converse all night while he works his overtime. Luna fixes him with an icy glare. She is reminded of the protagonist. She slowly closes her eyes, saying he resembles that person in appearance yet is his complete opposite in nature. Confused and irritated, he demands she stop speaking nonsense. Suddenly, a colossal claw crashes down from the sky, crushing Seung-won completely. Blood splashes across Luna's face. The creature's massive palm remains pressed firmly against the ground. To Luna, it only confirmed how repulsive he truly was. He turns to walk away, her overwhelming beauty evident with each step. And Seung-won's voice echoes, saying he had forgotten about that creature. He reappears, patting the monster's leg and concluding that Luna must control it. He realizes that explains her confidence and admits this will become a troublesome obstacle. Startled, Luna turns back and demands to know how he is still alive. She vows that this time she will erase him for good, insisting that filth like him has no right to exist. Seung-won responds indifferently, saying he could not care less, then begins unfolding a new space around them. Luna glances around as the surroundings shift into a separate dimension called the GM Zone, a restricted area created by special authority for testing and other purposes. Seung-won mocks her question about deserving to live. He tells her to stop acting dramatic and to quit pretending the game is reality. Luna answers him only with a frigid glare. Outside that isolated space, Jiwoo and Sarang keep racing toward the disturbance. Sarang wonders aloud if the explosion was Passive Boy's doing. Jiwoo agrees, adding that he suspects the culprit is the company hacker. Although the president claimed it was impossible, his face betrayed doubt. Jiwoo asks if she heard that Passive Boy single-handedly wiped out the Robin Hood Guild. He concludes that the bastard must have created an overpowered account and is making his move now. Sarang shouts her friend's name anxiously. She asks if there is any way to move faster, but Jiwoo admits he invested no stat points into agility. As they approach the GM zone, Sarang asks what exactly it is. Habiek, already present, explains that it is the trace of Passive Boy's teleport. He greets Jiwoo, saying it has been a while, Mr. Hero. Jiwoo demands to know why he is there and what happened to his missing arm. Sarang suddenly recalls that he was the one who once abducted her. Habiek explains that Passive Boy attacked him and dragged Luna into the GM zone. Jiwoo asks who Luna is, and Habiek teases that she talks about him often, implying Jiwoo likes her. Sarang looks clearly annoyed by that remark. Habiek describes Luna as having long black hair and an attractive figure. Jiwoo scoffs and asks if he means that little cockroach, since they barely know each other. Sarang jokes that she sounds like his type, but Jiwoo tells her to stop and reminds her she is the one who keeps making such comments. He adds he is not insane enough to like someone who insulted his parents and insists he has zero interest. Sarang visibly relaxes after hearing that. Habiek shrugs, asking what difference that makes. Watching from afar, Eurus finds their exchange oddly adorable. Habiek suddenly coughs up more blood. Jiwoo asks if he is all right since he looks on the verge of death. Habiek admits he is far from fine and asks the hero for assistance. Jiwoo questions why he should bother when he could simply take the drop, and Sarang agrees they could split it. Habiek warns that if he dies, the mirror he gave them will vanish as well. Jiwoo immediately places a hand on his shoulder, reassures him to calm down, promising to heal him regardless. Sarang asks how he intends to do that without healing potions, and Jiwoo casually says it is no problem. Power begins radiating from him. Jiwoo activates one of the Master Rookie's unique skills, the cleric class ability called Heal. He proceeds to cast it, yet it restores only HP. Habiek's health starts regenerating. The recovery crawls up 1 point at a time, and Habiek complains it feels more like damage, while Jiwoo jokes he should have put points into intelligence. Jiwoo then asks about the lost arm, noting that while scars vanish at full HP, limbs usually require tavern restoration. Habiek clarifies that rule applies to players, while monsters regain bodies only upon respawn. Jiwoo suggests killing him instantly, so he feels nothing. Habiek hurriedly stops him, revealing that as a unique boss he cannot respawn after death. Shocked, Jiwoo curses the terrible design of this game. Habiek calms him, explaining only a few unique bosses share this condition, and it does not affect the whole system. He adds that Eurus is also a unique boss, which the dragon confirms, explaining why he begged for salvation. Apart from them, Luna is another unique boss, who is stunned, questioning whether that cockroach is truly a boss. Meanwhile, inside the GM zone, violent explosion erupts. Seung-won lunges at Luna, roars for her to die. Luna stands her ground calmly and dares him to strike. Collision releases a massive surge of energy. Without pause, Seung-won swings again, triggering another blast of equal force. Luna warns him that it is pointless. Hovering in the air with fury, she proclaims herself the goddess of life and declares a human cannot kill a deity. Seung-won interrupts, claiming he cannot hear her nonsense. Luna's irritation becomes obvious. He mocks her as childish, saying she thinks those speeches sound impressive. He reminds her he has worked at the company for years and knows her powers thoroughly. He even watched her fight the protagonist through internal security footage shared with executives. That supposed invulnerability is actually her hidden ability called life creation. It is not that attacks miss, but that she recreates herself at the instant she would die. Charges once more with his blade. The strike detonates another shockwave that hits Luna directly. Luna immediately triggers life creation. She restores herself to her divine form. Seung-won remarks it is indeed overpowered, and the most complained about ability during development. He notes she even created Uriken using fragments from Eurus's nest, which is why she called him her son. He moves to attack her yet again. Luna responds that he talks far too much. She cleaves him in two with her scepter. She says knowing everything means nothing if he cannot take her life. Seung-won's body is flung across the space. He laughs, noting she finally struck him properly. Her scepter suddenly shifts back into its original staff form. Luna stares at it in surprise. Seung-won asks what she thought he brought into this zone. Her outfit begins changing as well. She reverts to the appearance she had as a player. Shock fills her face. Seung-won sneers, asking if she practiced that cute expression too, since he always thought she was nothing but trash. He slashes at her and declares that killing her will force Habiek's master to appear. Bids farewell to the unique boss, goddess of life Luna. In an upscale bar, a table overflows with costly drinks. Seung-won downs one in a single gulp, slams the glass down, saying overtime feels better with alcohol. His subordinate praises his hard work and says only the final step remains. Seung-won disagrees, noting that Habyek failed to summon his master. Subordinate argues that at least Luna was killed, which should have triggered the master's appearance. However, Seung-won admits he was unable to truly take her life. The man beneath him stared in disbelief. Meanwhile, Seung-won kept his eyes fixed on the floor, yet he added that it was irrelevant, since there were alternative ways to arrange a meeting. Subordinate confessed something had been bothering him, curious about the identity of Habyek's superior. Young-won questioned whether he had been serving him all this time without realizing it. Young man answered that since his university days, he had followed orders without ever questioning them. Song-won calmly placed his drink down on the table. He clarified that, in essence, he ranked among the primary bosses of the main storyline in Chrono Life. The ultimate traitor, known as the Calamity of Sloth. The subordinate wondered aloud if that creature could truly be a merchant, and Shengwen affirmed it, explaining that such flexibility was normal within Chrono Life. His companion mentioned he had heard something similar before, and that Uriken carried the title of gluttony. Seung-won seemed surprised he didn't recognize it, pointing out they represented the 7 deadly sins from Catholic lore, a theme often seen in films, comics, and video games. Pride, greed, envy, wrath, lust, gluttony, and sloth. These vices are considered the origin of all others, and collectively form the 7 deadly sins. The subordinate asked whether that bordered on plagiarism, and if Chrono Life was simply recycling ideas. Seung-won shot back that he was the foolish one, explaining that the main bosses were designed around that concept, including Eurus of Pride, Yurukin of Gluttony, and Riot of Sloth. Along with Luna, who embodied lust, the staff member became flustered, arguing that Damned Woman was also a principal boss, and that if someone like her were merely an ordinary player, the entire game balance would collapse. Superior clarified that being labeled a boss did not automatically make her an NPC. Still perplexed, the employee asked if a player had somehow advanced into a boss class. Young Hwan forcefully slammed his glass onto the table. He insisted that Chrono Life offered more liberty than imagined, stating that just as a boss could shift into a merchant role, a player could ascend to become a main boss. Jiwoo grumbled that everything sounded overly complex and demanded to know who that cockroach actually was. He wondered whether she was some hybrid between a player and an NPC. Habyek admitted uncertainty, saying it was unfamiliar territory to him, though he suggested the passive guy, being a GM, would likely know. The protagonist muttered that he now had yet another excuse to punch that guy. Karen cut in, mentioning there was still something puzzling her. She asked why the passive boy would seek out the Calamity of Sloth when he could simply auction the item for profit, adding that ever since the Robin Hood Guild attack, his behavior had lacked logic. Habyek replied that he personally had a theory about the motive. It revolved around the so-called piece of God, essentially mythic rank equipment. Jiwoo remarked that the phrase sounded familiar to him. Boris explained it was the term Habyek used when he abducted Captain Love, and that it referred to mythic rank items. Out of nowhere, Hong stepped toward them and asked if they were discussing mythic rank items as well. She apologized for her absence, saying she had been occupied with conducting her own investigation. Hong then suggested they temporarily team up, because she had located the passive boy's secret base. They followed her deep into the mountains until they reached a secluded little cabin. Sarang doubted it was truly the hideout, commenting that it looked far plainer than expected. Hong assured her it was correct and activated her judgment skill on the spot to verify it. Jiwoo asked whether the owner was currently inside, but Hong said there were no traces of him, and someone remarked it was unfortunate since they wanted to peek inside. Before the thought could finish, a sudden blast shattered the quiet. Jiwoo had already demolished part of the cabin with a single swing of his stick. Hong stared in disbelief and asked how he broke the wall, and Jiwoo casually answered that he just hit it and it gave way. Without hesitating further, they moved to enter. Once inside, Sarang was left speechless by what she saw. Mountains of gold were stacked alongside priceless relics. She questioned whether they were all duplicated items, but Hong firmly denied that. He stated that none were replicas, and that every single one was mythic rank. Hong estimated the hoard to be worth roughly $5 billion, stunning everyone present. She added that she recognized several pieces he had stolen during the attack, and assumed he stored them there after exhausting his inventory capacity. Clearly, his true objective had been the mythic equipment. Jiwoo asked why, wondering if it was for profit since he could have visited Eurus's nest as before. Hong explained that doing so would yield only limited funds and alert the company, as had happened in her case. Mythic gear operated differently because a buyer existed who could endlessly purchase them. Jiwoo realized that meant the buyer must be. Hong cut him off, revealing it was Habyk's master, the grand marketplace known as Riot. Habyek nodded, admitting he had reached the same conclusion. Hong remarked that the passive boy was even more devious than expected, though she conceded the strategy was clever. Since Riot was not a player, there was no danger of leaks, and the sales would not disrupt the in-game economy. She added that a screenshot sent to customer service would trigger proper measures, because the GM had stored those items in his private domain. After saying that, she took off her mask. She thanked them for their efforts, saying this evidence would allow them to resolve the case. Jiwoo challenged her, asking who authorized her to do that. He mockingly asked if she was acting in a drama, since she had been delivering speeches all day leading up to a customer service report. Hong confirmed and asked whether there was any better alternative. Jiwoo scoffed dismissively. He asked what other option existed, insisting they intended to teach the passive boy a harsh lesson. Later in the city, he appeared wearing Hong's mask. Seung-won, furious over everything, shot a murderous glare at the protagonist from within the crowd. Sarang wondered if that was truly the passive boy, noting he had shown up exactly as Underpants Guy predicted, standing right at the heart of the village. Seung-won demanded to know why he wore a mask and whether he was hiding, insulting him as the stick-wielding bastard. Jiwoo simply laughed loudly, saying he had borrowed it from Hong. He added that the mask was so iconic that anyone would instantly recognize it. An assassin perched on a rooftop asked if that was the passive boy, and Hong confirmed since he appeared just as expected. The guild member wondered what he was planning by making a scene in the village center. Back at the cabin, Jiwoo had declared they would first confiscate all his belongings. Hong asked for an explanation, and he replied that it was too troublesome to elaborate and she should trust that he had a plan. He also requested that she lend him a mask, ideally her own. Sarang responded by kicking him from behind, and later outside the cabin Seung-won arrived. He was enraged upon seeing the shattered wall. Charging forward, he shouted that a personal hideout was supposed to be indestructible. He frantically searched for his mythic items and money, only to find nothing left. The young man realized he was in serious trouble. His fury intensified when he spotted a note lying on the floor. It stated that if he wanted his possessions returned, he should come to the village at 7 in the evening. In the present moment, Seung-won stepped forward, demanding to know how he dared steal his wealth, but Jiwoo warned him to stay back. He unsheathed the draconic fire dagger and issued a threat. Take one more step, and I'll sell it to an NPC vendor. Seung-won shot back that it was worth 200 million in real currency, and selling it would barely bring 300 gold. Clenching his teeth, he shouted furiously, "Bastard, what exactly do you want?" Jiwoo answered that he desired nothing at all, but if forced to choose, Seung-won should figure it out on his own. Observing everything, Sarang thought Underpants Guy truly resembled a villain. Jiwoo mocked him again, asking if that trash had a problem and what he planned to do about it. Watching him shake was amusing, yet suddenly, Seung-won disappeared and instantly materialized behind the protagonist. He activated his teleportation to the GM zone, dragging Jiwoo along with him. A thick plume of smoke blanketed the city, blocking anyone from seeing what had just taken place. Sarang shouted out for Underpants Guy, only to notice that he had disappeared as well. Meanwhile, inside the GM zone, a violent blast erupted. Jiwoo and Seung-won collided their weapons with overwhelming power. The GM roared that a filthy pig dared challenge an administrator and swore to dice his body into pieces. Jiwoo took a clean hit, triggering a huge detonation behind him. He drove his staff into the ground to halt his flight, still being dragged across the terrain for quite a distance. From the sheer force of the impact, Hong's mask cracked down the middle and shattered onto the floor, exposing a deep gash across Jiwoo's face. He scoffed that Seung-won was even worse trash than expected for calling a player from his own company a pig. Nevertheless, his wounds rapidly closed thanks to his regeneration ability. Seung-won sneered that it didn't matter, claiming pigs like Jiwoo had lost touch with reality and gone insane over bits of game data, insisting scummy users did not deserve to be treated like humans. He slammed his sword against Jiwoo's staff once again. Another devastating explosion ripped through the surroundings, obliterating everything nearby. Jiwoo mocked him for being pathetic, accusing him of blaming players without cause and suggesting he was going through a midlife crisis. Those words only pushed Seung-won into deeper fury. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from Jiwoo's view. Jiwoo anticipated an attack descending from above. Instead, the strike came from his rear. Panic flickered through his mind as he realized he could not track him. Blades slashed at Jiwoo from every direction imaginable. Seung-won shouted that Jiwoo should not underestimate him, ranting that no matter how hard developers work, players repaid them only with complaints and insults. His thoughts drifted back to 7 years earlier at Chrono Life headquarters. Back then, he had been an idealistic developer who still believed in the dream. Jiwoo abruptly cut him off by smacking his face with the staff and telling him to shut up. He declared he did not care about some sob story villain origin and ordered Seung-won to stop the nonsense. The blow detonated with an explosion larger than any before. As the haze slowly began to clear, Seung-won's healing factor ability activated. His body restored itself instantly, and he countered with a slash across Jiwoo's chest. Jiwoo was stunned that he also possessed healing factor. Then he reasoned that for a GM account, such a skill was hardly surprising. Without warning, Sungwon triggered the hidden strength skill known as Spirit of a Titan. A tremendous blue aura burst forth from him. Jiwoo wondered if this was another hidden ability like the regeneration he had acquired. Shengwen slowly rose to his feet. According to its description, Spirit of a Titan granted the might of a giant and required conditions similar to healing factor. Seung-won clenched his jaw tightly, letting out a furious scream. The spectral titan looming behind him mirrored his every motion. Blue energy surged through his entire body. Jiwoo muttered about the over-the-top visual effects, noting even his healing factor was not this flashy. At last, the skill reached full activation. During that empowered state, attack power and range skyrocketed by 1,000%. Seung-won lifted his blade high and slashed horizontally, directing the strike toward Jiwoo, who sensed the terrifying scale of it. He was engulfed by the overwhelming wave of destruction that tore through everything ahead. His healing factor kicked in at once, and as his body repaired itself, Jiwoo tightened his grip on the staff, taking in the complete devastation surrounding him. He commented that the skill was practically cheating and told Seung-won to hand it over. Before anyone could fully process that statement, tentacle pierced straight through his abdomen. Jiwoo had activated the hidden skill of gluttony, declaring he could siphon his stats and acquire the ability. However, Seung-won narrowly dodged at the final moment, immediately triggering the hidden agilities, known as lightspeed dash. In an instant, countless slashes rained down on Jiwoo from all angles. Seung-won was bewildered by how it worked. His lightspeed dash granted him capacity to move at that velocity in any chosen direction. He then lunged forward yet again, claiming that battles were decided by stats and numbers, and his were maxed at level 99,999. That boast, he drove a heavy punch into Jiwoo's abdomen, launching him far across the battlefield, landing gracefully. Seung-won wondered if Jiwoo failed to grasp that no amount of control could overcome such an enormous stat gap. He even dismissed Jiwoo's playstyle as trash, calling him a loser dependent on overpowered gear. Jiwoo knelt while gripping his staff tightly. Fury burned in his eyes as he ground his teeth. Hearing that from Seung-won enraged him further, since the man was merely exploiting a GM account to cheat. Seung-won scoffed, saying if Jiwoo disliked it, he should have become a GM himself, bragging that with a few data tweaks he had crafted the strongest character out of sheer passion. His rant was cut short by a sudden headbutt. Jiwoo had shot toward him at blinding speed and slammed into him. Seung-won was hurled backward. Blood trickled from his nose, and his face twisted in total disbelief as he demanded how Jiwoo moved so fast with such low agility. Jiwoo answered that it was nothing more than pure skillful gameplay. Seung-won rose again, hurling insults at him. He activated lightspeed dash once more to attack, shouting for Jiwoo to repeat that trick, insisting no ability could rival his speed. He was simply crouched low and explained he had not used a skill, but exploited the game's mechanics. He swung his staff midair and abruptly reversed his direction, leaving Sheng-yuan utterly baffled. Jiwoo clarified that it was the rebound control feature. By striking the opposite way, he converted the recoil into propulsion, shooting straight toward Seung-won. The administrator was stunned by the technique. Jiwoo drove the staff hard into his forehead. Sheng-wen realized his opponent was incredibly fast. Jiwoo, however, acted as though the blow had been mere luck. The administrator crashed to the ground, kicking up a massive cloud of dust. Jiwoo mocks him, asking how that impact felt and whether it lived up to the hype. Clarifies that all he did was disable the rebound control feature in the settings menu. Then he asks how it feels to be hit by a rebound strong enough to shatter a planet. Seung-won flares up, insulting him for abusing cheap mechanics and insisting he has no reason to celebrate, claiming it was nothing but a fluke that will not happen again. Jiwoo nods, admitting that he is still far slower than lightspeed dash. He suggests they stop wasting time and settle things now. Seung-won responds with cold laughter. He sneers that Jiwoo is just a filthy player who misunderstands everything because of one lucky strike. After all, someone like him could never hope to defeat an administrator. Jiwoo calmly answers that there is indeed a method. He stretches his hand forward. As a violet radiance bursts from his power, Jiwoo bids farewell to the passive boy, remarking that although brief, the fight was entertaining. Outside the game, Sarang grows curious. He wonders what Underwear Boy intends to do, since no matter how strong he is, beating a GM seems impossible. Hong admits she also lacks the full picture and mentions that apparently even his girlfriend was kept in the dark. Sarang beams at being called that and says Jiwoo only told her about provoking the passive boy to drag him into the GM zone. Hong then confesses that something feels off, specifically why he left a message and delayed everything by 1 day. She suspects it connects to whatever strategy he plans to use to win. Back inside the game, Jiwoo's hand continues glowing with overwhelming purple light. Seung-won starts to worry that his opponent's confident smile might mean he truly has a way to defeat him. Jiwoo activates Character Summon, the most basic form of summoning ability. Seung-won repeats the name in disbelief, then bursts into mocking laughter. He expected some ultimate technique, but got a beginner summon instead. He ridicules Jiwoo, saying that with low charisma and intelligence, such a skill is worthless. Those base stats are too low, meaning he could only call forth a feeble creature. He insults him again as a filthy pig. His words abruptly stop. A portal tears open and a man steps through. He casually pulls out a cigar and adjusts his sunglasses coolly. It was Dayak Bey, and Seung-Wan is left utterly stunned at the sight. Jiwoo grins, finding Seung-Wan's horrified reaction worth all the effort. The night before, a junior asked his senior to stay for another drink, but he declined, saying he had overtime work. His coworker praised his dedication and expressed admiration, and invited someone else to continue drinking. On his way out, however, the senior encountered a group of men in suits. They were escorting President Daekbi. Later, in a shadowy alley, the employee was kneeling and pleading for mercy, swearing he only followed orders and planned to flee once he had the money. Team leader asked for instructions, and Dayak Bey ordered them to dispose of the traitor. Approaching Jiwoo afterward, he thanked him for exposing the mole before things escalated. Jiwoo joked that it felt less like a game company and more like the mafia. Dayak Bey admitted he had nearly decided to kill Jiwoo if he called again for no reason, and Jiwoo accepted that calmly. The president laughed it off as a joke and promised to handle the passive boy by contacting legal to sue him thoroughly and fire him. Jiwoo then asked if he was free tomorrow at 7 in the evening, and Dayak Bey said he was. Jiwoo smiled widely and invited him to attend the lesson that would take place. Back in the present, Seung-Wan's legs shake at the president's appearance. He screams in terror, begging the system to log him out, but the request is rejected because he remains in combat. Desperate, he orders the GM zone to shut down. Jiwoo points out that he is trying to flee. The president counters by commanding the presidential zone to open. Surroundings shift into a green-tinted domain. Seung-Wan grows pale and cries that everything is finished. Though trembling with his sword in hand, he mutters that he can just resign afterward. He charges recklessly at top speed, thinking even if it is the president, he does not care anymore. Yet his attack fails to connect, only slicing off the burning tip of the president's cigar. Seung-Wan shakes uncontrollably at that outcome. Even Jiwoo is left speechless. President calmly takes another puff. He remarks that even mad dogs hesitate to bite their masters, saying Seung-Wan is worse than one. President Choi Dayak possesses limitless stats and an infinite level. He slowly raises his fist, declaring coldly that Seung-Wan is fired. Seung-Wan can only accept the inevitable. He squeezes his eyes shut as the fist approaches. His face is crushed instantly. A blast even greater than Jiwoo's erupts from his back. That single punch completely obliterates the passive boy. Jiwoo is stunned, realizing the damage surpassed even a 99,999 healing factor, and that the old president is terrifying. That the issue ends. The stolen epic items return to their rightful owners, and several guilds are confirmed victims. Later, Jiwoo learns that Seung-Wan was fired that very day. In reality, he was beaten senseless by the president and thrown out. He attempted to sue for assault afterward, but that only worsened his situation. Chairman fought back legally with full force and was cleared of all charges. Seung-Wan now faces a lifetime of repaying damages and lost profits, and rumors say he has been permanently blacklisted from the industry. Thus, the story concludes on a satisfying note. In the starting village, life as a merchant resumed as usual after that day. He walks toward his companions and sees Hung wearing her mask, and Sarang smiling brightly. Everything seems back to normal again. After logging out of Chrono Life, he returns to his couch and lets out a deep sigh. Jiwoo reflects that one thing still bothers him. He never got to ask the passive boy something important. He wanted to know how that cockroach could exist as both player and NPC, and why her identity remained unknown. As he stands up, he notices a girl sitting on his couch. Jiwoo is utterly stunned, his face shifting instantly. Luna cheerfully greets him, saying it has been a while since she saw Mr. Loser. Jiwoo prepares a bowl of ramen for her. Luna comments that it looks delicious and must taste amazing. Jiwoo confidently assures her that it does. She begins eating while he watches her cautiously, wondering what on earth is happening in his home. At least one mystery is resolved. She is definitely not an NPC. She had never been anything but a player. Luna caught him staring at her. Jiwoo's cheeks turned red, and she flushed just as noticeably. She asked why he kept looking at her, and Jiwoo awkwardly tried to brush it off. Is it because I'm that pretty? Irritated, Jiwoo told her to quit joking around and finish her ramen. Girl quietly resumed eating. Jiwoo followed suit, still blushing as he admitted to himself that she was stunning. Then he recalled her earlier comment about not forming a hunting party with a loser like him. He had even insulted his parents by calling them beggars. He realized he had almost let himself be swept away again like a fool. Turning serious, he demanded to know who she really was, how she knew his address, and even the code to his home. Luna finished eating and remained inside. He stood up and stretched, saying she ought to reward him for the meal and, since he must be curious about many things, he could ask whatever he wanted, and she would answer honestly. Jiwoo eyed her warily but agreed, deciding to begin with something simple. He asked whether that was her natural hair color, because it had been pale pink when they first met. Luna looked at him shyly, her cheeks reddening. He said he had asked that before and added, she was glad he remembered. Thinking back to their first fight, she confirmed that the color was completely natural. Jiwoo frowned, asking what she was talking about, and she tried to dodge the topic, teasing him by asking if he preferred pink hair and whether she should dye it, but he quickly shifted the subject. He asked if her character had been erased after losing to the passive boy. Luna explained she had died, yet her character remained because the fight occurred while she was in human mode. When Jiwoo pressed for more, she admitted she hadn't known her divine authority would vanish in an administrator's zone, which was a huge relief. Otherwise, she would have been forced to start over from scratch. Jiwoo then questioned whether she intended to repeat that plan, since becoming the goddess of life required taking 1,000 lives. Luna shook her head, saying killing 1,000 players was only one of several conditions. She also needed to fulfill an even harsher requirement to change classes. She could freely alternate between her human form and goddess form. Then she asked if he had any other questions. Jiwoo said he appreciated her openness, but reminded her she still hadn't answered the most important question. He demanded again to know who she truly was. He pointed out she appeared everywhere he went in the game and now even followed him in real life, which was insane. Warning her not to dodge again, he threatened to call the police if she refused to answer clearly. Luna met his gaze directly, then closed her eyes, saying too many people in that world were obstacles. Rising to her feet, she said she had come to propose something. She asked whether Mr. Loser wanted to become her man. Jiwoo was stunned by the sudden proposal, until he grasped what she actually meant. An uneasy silence filled the room. Suddenly, the doorbell rang over and over. Jiwoo wondered who would show up so late. He went over and opened the door. Outside, Sarang asked if Boxer Boy was home, introducing herself as his friend. She insisted it was urgent and told him to unlock the door. He glanced back toward Luna's direction, hesitating because she was still inside his room. After a few minutes, he finally let her in, and Han Sarang scolded him for making her wait. So this is Boxer Boy's place, she thought, noticing it was much tidier than expected and laid out similarly to her own apartment. Glancing around to the side, she asked if he was eating a late snack since it smelled spicy, and he confirmed it. When he asked why she came so late, she said it was about the game and asked when he would log in tomorrow, and he replied he would decide after waking up and having breakfast. From inside the room, Luna overheard everything, closing her eyes as jealousy stirred. Sarang said she would see him tomorrow and warned she would kill him if he overslept. Before leaving, she said she needed one more thing. He asked for his phone to save her number, since she could not keep visiting whenever she wanted to talk. Jiwoo wondered if it was safe for a celebrity to hand out her number, and Sarang asked why he was being weird. After saving her contact as Han Sarang, she asked him to call her so she could store his number too. Before walking away, she warned that if he ignored her messages, she would drag him straight to hell. The apartment door finally shut. Jiwoo stood there wondering what had just happened. Outside with the door closed behind her, Sarang exhaled in relief. She had managed to get his number without making it awkward. She decided she should text him as soon as possible. Back inside, Jiwoo muttered that all this midnight chaos might give him a heart attack. Luna asked why he made her hide when nothing inappropriate was happening. He replied that her mere presence was strange enough and said he was exhausted and wanted her to leave. Luna declared she would only go after spending the night, making Jiwoo feel like he was losing his sanity. He quickly added she was joking and would leave once he answered her proposal. Jiwoo demanded what kind of ridiculous offer that was and told her to stop speaking nonsense and explain who she really was. Luna said the question was broad, but simply put, she wanted him to join her party in the game. The following day, inside a magnificent hall, Habiek summoned his master. He appeared before him despite missing an arm, addressing him respectfully as Lord Disaster of Slaw. Riot, the great merchant seated upon his throne, examined his subordinate's injury, asking how his arm had been lost. Habiek knelt and apologized, admitting his incompetence led to his body being damaged. Riot's anger flared at the explanation, and he stretched out his hand toward him, restoring him instantly. A fresh arm regenerated from his shoulder. Astonished, Habiek exclaimed that he was fully healed again. Riot demanded to know who had done this, asking whether it was the hero mentioned earlier. Habiek denied it, saying the hero had actually saved him instead. He insisted that if his master met him, he would approve, because he was the strongest current candidate for the 7 deadly sins. On a shoreline within Chrono Life, meant for players level 30 and above, slimes roamed as common gelatinous monsters. However, the true boss of the area was far beyond beginner level. It was the level 85 Kraken. Its hide was so durable that even blades struggled to pierce it, and its limbs allowed it to move effortlessly across both land and sea. a creation born from flawed balance, paired with a savage temperament, a field boss infamous for leaving beginners traumatized. Yet in that instant Jiwoo struck its jaws with a skill that stopped just short of draining the last HP. Creature's health froze at a single remaining point, and the Kraken toppled heavily onto the sand. Jiwoo yelled for Captain Love to make her move. She sprang upward without hesitation, soaring to her maximum height. After a swift aerial twist, she brought down her fallen dragon stomp upon the beast, smashing it into the earth with crushing force. Pressed, Jiwoo praised the flawless finisher and asked if she gained decent experience. She shook her head, saying the reward was minimal. Eurus explained that the massive level gap prevented her from earning much EXP. Jiwoo then asked if her skill had improved, since it seemed stronger than before. Sarang replied that the boost likely came from her new weapon. Jiwoo recalled the gauntlets and noted she could probably hunt solo now. She pouted, saying that would mean staying away from her brief's boy. He teased that being carried by him was far more enjoyable as they kept chatting. High above them, Luna observed quietly, radiating elegance as she hovered. She remembered Jiwoo's response from the previous day. He had rejected her outright, saying he refused to risk betrayal again like during their first encounter. He added that he was already teamed with Sarang and would get beaten if he let her join. Watching Sarang pull Jiwoo aside, Luna muttered with envy that she felt tempted to ruin the girl entirely. Still, she turned away and chose patience. In the end, Jiwoo would belong to her, and she would claim that woman's life for Chrono Life's conclusion. Eurus advised Jiwoo that power leveling her was not feasible. He complained this issue kept resurfacing, but the gap was too wide, prompting Jiwoo to ask for. Their discussion drew Sarang's attention. Jiwoo pondered possible alternatives. Sarang interrupted, saying he had been talking to himself and asking if someone else was there. Startled, Jiwoo asked if she could not see the tiny dragon, but she looked confused. Eurus reminded his young master that others could not perceive him. Jiwoo recalled this fact, as Eurus suggested sharing a bit of mana to manifest physically. Jiwoo argued his stats were too low and his mana nearly empty, yet Eurus insisted it would suffice. Jiwoo released a surge of violet energy. Eurus's spirit began forming in front of them. Sarang noticed the glow concentrating at one point. The dragon appeared in his cute miniature form, emitting an equally adorable cry. Sarang immediately got a nosebleed. He squealed at his cuteness and begged to pet him. Eurus bristled at her boldness, demanding how a mere human dared touch him, and whether she feared damnation. Jiwoo allowed it anyway, and Sarang hugged the tiny dragon instantly. Suddenly a voice echoed that he had finally located them. Jiwoo turned to see Habiek on his griffin and asked why he was there. Habiek said matters had escalated, and he had fled urgently to find the hero. Jiwoo questioned how he tracked him down, and Habiek said he used the mirror's power, seventh vision of exploration, which guided him to a former opponent. He warned there was no time, as a dreadful figure was approaching fast. Jiwoo noticed his restored arm, and Habiek confirmed his master healed it, but stressed a massive crisis awaited. At that moment, immense pressure shook the area. Jiwoo wondered if an earthquake had struck. Sarang and even Eurus felt the oppressive force. With dread, Habiek declared that his master had arrived, the eternal sovereign of the Grand Throne. Surrounded by countless angels, Riot, the disaster of sloth, had appeared. Sarang asked if that armored figure was some kind of angelic soldier. Jiwoo instead recalled the warnings about the disaster. He expected a merchant-like being similar to Habiek, and was baffled by Riot's colossal size. Habiek flew toward his lord atop the griffin, apologizing for failing to explain properly. Riot answered calmly that he would descend and clarify matters himself. Trembling, Habiek closed his eyes and accepted the order. The throne plunged downward at incredible speed, slamming into the beach with thunderous force. Shockwave hurled Jiwoo and Sarang away. Riot greeted Jiwoo politely, saying he had heard much and that he was the current hero. Jiwoo felt uneasy, questioning if this giant truly embodied sloth. Meanwhile, deep within a forest, Luna calmly approached ancient ruins. Her expression showed she had planned this. She whispered that she had finally located it. So this was where he sat upon the throne. Before her stood Lord Yopi, the first hero and strongest human. Luna remarked that he matched the game's description, a legendary yet outdated hero. Suddenly the mark on Yopi's forehead glowed brightly, revealing hidden power. Luna stated she had anticipated this reaction. Raising her scepter toward him, she commented that whoever wrote this storyline made it childish and cliché. She admitted that was part of its appeal. Her scepter shone intensely, targeting the legendary hero. Back on the shore, Jiwoo observed Riot thoughtfully. It was Sloth, one of the 7 deadly sins commanding the mightiest angelic legion, and also renowned throughout Chrono Life as the great merchant. He looked perfectly suited to sit upon that towering throne of solid gold that rose several meters high. Yet despite the overwhelming splendor surrounding him, he had the form of a young child, leaving Jiwoo and Sarang visibly taken aback. Eurus remarked that the little rascal hadn't lost any of his magnetism, even after so long. With a casual use of his abilities, Riot drifted down from the throne and glided toward the main character. This vessel is Riot Sloth, and you must be the hero Habiak spoke of, correct? Jiwoo answered that he likely was, though the child's aura made him feel oddly uneasy. Riot released a dismissive breath, mocked that humanity must have declined greatly. Someone like Jiwoo was now labeled. Jiwoo demanded to know what he was implying, but an explosive kick suddenly smashed into his face. Sarang was stunned by how fast he moved. Riot twisted midair and delivered another strike, effortlessly slamming the opposite side of Jiwoo's face, launching him into a boulder and shattering it with heavy impact. Abik shouted in alarm, "Lord Riot, why attack the hero? He's the one who aided us." Riot coldly told him to be silent, saying if he wished to chat he wouldn't have traveled this far. He declared that their kind would forever stand against humans, and scolded him for approaching them so carelessly, asking if he understood how foolish that was. Climbing out from the debris, Jiwoo admitted there was truth in his words. The boy clearly understood that players and monsters were destined to remain enemies, so he told him not to move. As Riot had attacked first, there shouldn't be any complaints, right? Riot answered only with a furious glare. "Don't get it twisted, human. You were the one who struck first." Puzzled, Jiwoo asked when exactly he had done that. In reply, Riot stomped down hard, triggering a violent blast that shook the area. Eurus, pride among the 7 deadly sins, was the one who died and sped up the entire game's progression. As he said this, he flung a massive stone toward Jiwoo. Jiwoo questioned why he was only bringing that up now. He knocked the rock aside with his staff, causing yet another explosive shockwave. Eurus is officially the mightiest boss in Chrono Life, Riot roared, driving a crushing kick into Jiwoo's abdomen. He was meant to appear in the story's final raid, yet you killed him early and threw everything out of balance. The Huracan of Gluttony was never meant to be devoured either. They were destined to fall a decade from now. Sarang tried to step in, insisting Huracan attacked first, and Jiwoo had only protected her. Riot snapped at her to keep quiet. The girl shrank back in fear. Deadly Sin continued angrily. "How dare you cut me off when I never permitted you to speak?" An overwhelming force pressed her down to the floor. She questioned what kind of in-game power this was since she had never felt anything so oppressive, not even against Huracan. Watching from afar, Eurus observed the unfolding events, until he sensed something had shifted. Their eyes locked across the distance. I had explained that Huracan came into existence because of Eurus' defeat, and that she ultimately bore responsibility for everything. And the issue that had been building since then was now on the verge of exploding. Chrono Life's strongest human, the first hero Yopi, would soon return to life. Yopi's skeletal form slowly opened its eyes, releasing a powerful aura identical in hue to Luna's. Grin formed on the girl's lips. She admitted it wasn't yet his destined time to awaken, which was why she had come to lend him her strength. Once bare bones began sprouting flesh and defined fingers, fully restoring beneath the armored glove. Yopi stood from his throne, radiating immense power. Jiwoo wondered what would occur if he truly came back. If he was a hero, then logically he should side with humanity, so his revival shouldn't cause trouble. Riot exhaled irritably. She called him more foolish than she expected, and said he should already understand. He would not return as a human, but as one of the 7 deadly sins, existing solely to destroy and to avenge the humans who betrayed him. Temple ground started shaking violently. A bony hand burst through the soil. A skeleton clawed its way up from beneath. It was the first of countless undead emerging to form an army. Yopi's overwhelming aura became visible across all of Chrono Life. Luna then revealed that the man who once loved and trusted humanity now despised them after death. A tragically childish tale that defined the sin he would inherit. Colossal skeletal dragon descended to join the growing legion. Yopi proclaimed he had been the first hero and was now the embodiment of wrath. There existed an ancient continent known as Chrono. It had once been a land without conflict, blessed with lasting peace. But one fateful day demons invaded, began slaughtering humans without mercy, plunging the entire region into chaos. In moments, the peaceful continent of Chrono transformed into a living hell. Amid that despair, a radiant light emerged later called the first hero Yopi. Though Jiwoo skipped the cutscene, Riot asked what he had done, and Jiwoo admitted he hit skip since he never bothered reading game lore. Essentially, she was saying the fallen hero would rise again. Jiwoo had heard enough, endured her blows, and realized that was the sole reason she appeared. Then boasted that he defeated the admired Eurus in a single strike, and that whether strongest human or first hero, it made no difference because he had nothing to fear. Riot responded that his stupidity surpassed her expectations. He found it unbelievable that a human like him felt no fear. After all, the first hero and his forces would soon overwhelm everyone. With that statement, she turned away. Jiwoo called out asking where she was headed, thinking she had come for a fight. Riot replied it wasn't entertaining. She only wanted to assess the current hero, and decided he was unimpressive. She claimed she once fought beside Yopi, and that he alone was a human worthy of recognition. Jiwoo would never defeat him. Jiwoo sighed and thanked her for fueling his desire to crush Yopi, but warned she was mistaken if she thought she could leave after attacking him. Habyek stepped in, urging the hero to stay calm. Jiwoo warned him to release him, unless he wished to follow his master into hell. Habyek insisted there was no need for further conflict, since their conversation had ended. Jiwoo shot back that he still wanted a fight, because his jaw throbbed from her earlier strike. Habyek pleaded again and mentioned the fortune Jiwoo earned selling items, leaving him shocked and asking how he knew. The King of Mirrors revealed that his master had informed him. It was Riot who had spent 15 billion gold purchasing those items. Elsewhere within Yopi's ranks, he stood at the center beside Luna. Yopi stated he grasped the circumstances, since ages had passed since his death. Luna affirmed he was meant to revive far in the future, but history had already unraveled. So she granted him energy and told him not to be concerned. Yopi expressed gratitude and vowed to repay her, if given the opportunity. Luna inquired about his destination. First Hero replied the answer was obvious, addressing her as lust among the 7 deadly sins. His dragon spread its massive wings and released a thunderous roar. The beast took to the sky heading toward the mountain range and ready to blazing breath attack. Down below, the skeletons scramble in panic, scattering in every direction. Yopi proclaims that he will personally bring ruin to the very world he once swore to defend. Afterward, he activates a teleportation spell and vanishes instantly, leaving Luna standing there as the smoke slowly fades away. He releases a long, weary sigh. Well then, she tells herself, my task here has come to an end. Doubt lingers in her mind as she questions whether it was truly the right choice and if regret would follow. With Urakan, she acted out of pure desire, but this time was different. She intervened only because he felt like an unresolved piece of the main narrative. A sacred voice answers that everything is fine and that they should simply savor the outcome. From a distant vantage point overlooking the planet, they prepare to witness how this world will ultimately be purified.